My sister locked me in a basement while I was pregnant. Parents cut her wedding funds after I fell and nearly lost my baby. After 3 years of trying, several rounds of IVF, and what seemed like an endless amount of suffering, I, 33F, am currently 3 months pregnant. My parents have been incredibly supportive during this entire ordeal, so we told them in private a month ago. There was only calm happiness between us, no big reveal, no social media post. In addition, I wanted to be farther along in my pregnancy before making a big announcement, so I didn't want to inform too many people outside of my parents and my husband's parents. Last weekend was my sister's engagement party. Let's call her Emily, 29F. Emily has always had a lot to offer. Being the center of attention is something she enjoys. She performed stunts all over the place as a child to maintain her fame. Holidays with the family. The star was Emily. Birthdays of friends? She somehow made herself the center of attention. Since I simply lack the energy to oppose her, I've lived my entire life letting her have her way. I didn't want the party to be about me, but I did expect some small drama. Since I've been feeling a lot of fatigue lately, I intended to keep in the background, help Emily, and depart early. In order to evade inquiries, I even wore loose clothing and refused to discuss my pregnancy with anyone. Up until my mother pulled me away during the celebration, everything was going smoothly. Since the pregnancy had been difficult thus far, she simply wanted to see how I was feeling. I've had the worst of the early symptoms, so I was happy to have some time to chat to my mother, who was the only one who truly knew how I was feeling. We moved to a secluded area to talk away from the guests. Unfortunately, things took a very other turn when Emily overheard us. In the blink of an eye, Emily went from 0 to 100. Furious, she interrupted the discourse and accused me of trying to take her thunder. I was really perplexed. I attempted to clarify that we were merely having a private talk and that I wasn't making any announcements, as I had previously informed Mom and Dad weeks prior. Emily, however, was having none of it. She said that I was being self-centered and that I couldn't bear to give her a day to herself. Right there, she created a big commotion, and people began to take notice. I felt ashamed. It seemed as though she wasn't even paying attention to me when I insisted that I didn't intend for any of this to occur. She was certain that my purpose in attending her party was to spoil her moment. Emily persisted because she is unable to let things go. She claimed that this was my usual behavior, that I was envious of her, and that I always had to make things about me. I wanted to get out at that time because I was so overwhelmed. But Emily stormed off, so I didn't have to. My mother simply persuaded me to attend the party in order to help my sister. I also reasoned that I could go back to Emily and properly explain what had happened if I allowed her some time to calm down. Once more, I was spared the trouble. Emily came up to me out of nowhere, wearing a strange smile. "I would like to see something in the basement," she remarked. She felt I would like anything about a memento from our early years. To be honest, I didn't give it much thought at the moment. I assumed this was her attempt to make things more amicable. She slammed the door and locked it as soon as I entered the basement, but I followed her downstairs. I went cold. She laughed, and I could hear it through the door. She said it was retaliation for my attempt to make me the focus of her engagement celebration. I knocked and told her to open the door since I initially believed she was kidding, but she didn't. I was left stranded down there as she continued to giggle and left. Panic struck me hard at that time. I wasn't feeling well to start, and it was chilly and dark. The nausea and tension came on full force. As my mind raced with ideas on how I may escape the basement, I began to pace back and forth. I saw that I might be able to climb out of a window. I located a crate under the window and climbed upon it because I needed a boost to pull my body out. Unfortunately, I was in such a panic that I was unaware of how shaky and lightheaded I was. Halfway up on the box, my foot slipped, and I fell, crashing hard on my stomach and side. It was horrifying how much pain rushed through me. In an attempt to determine whether the baby was all right, I laid there for a while, gasping. My heart was pounding, and I broke down in tears of fear and annoyance. Worst-case possibilities kept coming to mind. What if this fall resulted in a miscarriage? What if Emily's dumb joke caused something to happen to my baby? I made an effort to gather myself and gradually succeeded in sitting down on the floor in a more comfortable position. It seemed like forever, but I'm not sure how long I was down there. It must have been at least an hour before anyone came looking for me. I gripped my knees, sat on the chilly floor, and did my best to keep from having a panic attack. Finally, on the other side of the door, I heard my husband's voice calling my name and footsteps. When I knocked feebly on the door, he unlocked it and roughly dragged me out. He sounded desperate. After glancing at me, he declared that we had to depart right now. I didn't protest because I was so afraid and in so much agony. I tried not to cry or stress out during the whole vehicle ride as we hurried to the emergency room. Whether this was it, or if I had lost the baby because my sister couldn't stand someone else receiving attention for 5 minutes, was all I could think about. They performed an ultrasound at the hospital. I barely managed to hold my breath the entire time. The doctor stated it was a close call, but fortunately the baby was unharmed. The result might have been worse if I had fallen more forcefully. I was both emotionally spent and relieved. My husband was incensed and informed me he would not tolerate this. He called my parents right away to let them know what had transpired. No one had been given an explanation because we had left the party so quickly. My spouse requested that my parents have a firm conversation with Emily and inform her that we would not be seeing her again until after I gave birth. Believe me, I am incredibly thankful to have a husband that aggressively defends me. We ultimately spent several hours in the emergency room before I was stable enough to return home. The party had long since ended by the time we returned home, and my phone was exploding with texts from my parents. At first, I didn't respond to any of them because I simply wanted to go to sleep and forget that the day had even occurred. After texting them to reassure them that I was fine, my husband turned off his phone as well. I learned what had transpired after we left when my folks phoned me again the following morning. My folks were apparently rather perplexed by what was happening when we hurried over to the emergency room. Since my husband had made a little commotion by asking Emily where I was, they made an effort to get Emily to tell them what had happened. My parents were incensed when my husband later called them from the hospital to inform them of Emily's actions. In front of everyone who was still at the party, my parents chastised Emily right away for locking me in the basement. Calling it a harmless prank that went too far, my mom attempted to minimize it, but my dad wasn't buying it. Given everything I had gone through to become pregnant, he was incensed that Emily would act in such a careless manner. When he finally told Emily that enough was enough, he made the momentous revelation that my parents would no longer be providing any financial support for Emily's wedding and honeymoon. My parents had always expressed their desire to financially support Emily and me during our significant life events. They had planned to support Emily in the same way that they had supported my wedding. Emily, regrettably, never imagined that they would ever break their word. Emily went totally crazy. Reiterating that I had destroyed her life, she broke down in tears in front of everyone. She accused me of doing all of this on purpose and referred to me as evil. I wasn't shocked when my parents later informed me that they had never witnessed Emily act so strangely. When things didn't go her way, Emily would always react negatively. She pleaded with my parents to change their minds, but my father refused to budge. Ever since, Emily and my mother have been bombarding me with calls and texts. My mother keeps urging me to speak with my father and persuade him to reconsider, but I informed her that I was done. I'm not going to ignore Emily's transgression in an effort to maintain harmony. Naturally, Emily has been bombarding my phone with every possible abuse. She is accusing me of being responsible for everything, claiming that nothing of this would have occurred if I had simply kept quiet. She maintains that I have ruined her life and that her fiancé is now beginning to question if he truly wants to wed her. A part of me feels bad, but I also know that I'm not to blame. I still feel horrible though. I can't help but feel that I must be at fault in some way, even though my husband and father have both told me that I'm not. Is it my fault that my sister's engagement, wedding, and honeymoon were ruined? First update. I had no idea my post would become that popular. I want to start by saying how much I appreciate all of the comments and support on my first post. Reading them has been really beneficial. It gives me comfort to know that I'm not alone in my feelings. Before I give you an update on what's happened since my last post, I'd like to address some questions that many people had about whether my parents ever gave me preferential treatment or whether Emily and I had a history of animosity. I wouldn't say my parents showed preference, to be honest. Growing up, my parents were actually fairly fair. Despite their best efforts to treat us all fairly, Emily only received somewhat more attention due to her status as the family's baby. But Emily seemed to become an attention seeker and self-centered person as a result of that little more attention. No matter the occasion, she was the child who would act out if someone else was given the limelight. To keep the peace, my parents largely caved into her rather than establishing limits. Therefore, Emily obviously got away with much more than I ever did, even if I wouldn't call it favoritism. I've tried to maintain harmony between us for the majority of my life. Since it was simpler to let her have her way than to argue, I learned to do so. In addition, I always believed that it was my responsibility as the older sister to be the more responsible one and avoid upsetting anyone. But Emily always managed to drive me to the edge, no matter how hard I tried. I had to balance not to stomp on her toes so she wouldn't blow up at every family gathering. I suppose that contributes to her current sense of entitlement. The much anticipated update is now here. Emily lost it all after my parents stopped sponsoring her wedding. She accused me of stealing her moment and wrecking her life in a lengthy text message the next day. By the way, she didn't say sorry for locking me in the basement, rather, she went on to add that I took it too seriously and that it was only a joke. She went into full assault mode when I didn't answer. I staged the entire pregnancy crisis to get attention, Emily began telling everyone in the family. The rest of our family soon learned that I was pregnant when my husband hurried me to the emergency room that day, which was not something I wanted at all. I've had to deal with the rest of my family contacting me in addition to my sister's wild calls and texts. These communications were initially intended to ask how I was doing and to offer congratulations. However, they gradually started to seem strange. Many family members began questioning me about how I could pretend to be pregnant in order to undermine Emily. I didn't know what was happening. Emily, it turned out, had started circulating the rumor that I had arranged to get hurt in order to spoil her engagement celebration. She spread the word among our family members that I was some malevolent genius who attempted to ruin her life. It was quite painful when multiple family members contacted me, perplexed and unsure if the pregnancy was genuine. Ava, one of my cousins, even questioned me about whether I was fabricating the pregnancy to get even with Emily. It was crazy. My mom has been attempting to remain impartial throughout this, which genuinely feels like a betrayal, which has made matters worse. She insists that I must be the stronger one and that Emily is simply anxious about the wedding. But when my own sister is spreading false information about me at one of the most joyous moments of my life, how am I meant to be the stronger person? It wears you out. I made the decision to cut ties with my mother as well after attempting to argue with her without success. She arrived at my residence approximately 2 weeks following Emily's engagement celebration. My husband urged me not to open the door, but I foolishly assumed she could be coming to apologize when she kept hammering on my door and demanding that I solve this because I had ruined everything. She wasn't, to give you a hint. She began yelling at me the moment I opened the door, accusing me of ruining her life and causing everything to fall apart. She even accused me of being the reason her fiancé's parents were re-evaluating the wedding since they believed she was immature. She really lost it when I tried to clarify that she was the one who had locked me in a basement and that none of this was my fault. When Emily noticed the framed ultrasound picture I placed on the coffee table, she barged into my living room, ripped the frame off, and then tore the ultrasounds to pieces. After everything that had transpired, I couldn't believe she would do anything so heinous, and I was paralyzed. She yelled that she wished I lost the baby so she could regain her life before she walked out, but my husband was furious and told her to go. Her level of anger was unprecedented, and it frightened me. I just started crying after she went. For hours, I was unable to stop crying. Everything seemed to have happened at once. Being imprisoned in the basement, nearly losing the baby, and then discovering that my sister's malice knew no bounds. I couldn't comprehend how someone could wish that on their own family, so I kept repeating what she had said in my mind. To be honest, I'm not sure if I can dispute my husband's desire to cut off any communication with her right away. Even though I know I should cut her off, I still feel bad about it, as if I'm somehow at fault for everything. Emily is simply in a horrible place, according to my mom, and I should attempt to forgive her. However, how can you forgive someone who wishes harm on your child? Emily's fiancé contacted me personally, which further complicated matters. He stated he's been having a lot of trouble with Emily's unpredictable conduct and expressed regret for her actions during the party. He said he's beginning to see a side of her that he didn't know existed, and he's not sure if he can still go through with the wedding. I was unsure of how to respond to him. I'm stuck in the middle of their relationship turmoil, which is upsetting because I never wanted to be involved. Right now, I'm unsure of what to do. For the sake of my mother, I have mixed feelings about forgiving Emily, but I'm also afraid she'll continue to harm me. I'm not sure whether she can change. I don't want to be preoccupied with worrying about what she's going to do next during my pregnancy. Right now, my baby and my health are my top priorities. We're just attempting to minimize the stress, and my spouse has been tremendously supportive. However, it still feels like things with Emily are far from over. She won't go down without creating more drama since you know her. If anything else comes up, I'll keep everyone updated. I'm not holding my breath, but right now I'm just hoping for a little calm. Second update. Hello, I haven't updated on this site in a month, but I've been so busy. I thought I'd give you all an update since a lot has happened and I've finally had some spare time. Now let me start where I left off. I was distraught for a week after Emily tore my ultrasounds and ran gone. I assume that Emily's fiancé contacted me because he was hesitant to marry her after she told him about what she had done. They had apparently started fighting frequently. Her fiancé contacted me to tell me what had transpired. He apparently attempted to reassure her that since the two of them had saved up more than enough money, they wouldn't require my parents' money to carry out the wedding. My sister, however, would not listen. She was determined to destroy my life in the same manner that I had allegedly destroyed hers. She would talk about how she could get even with me all day and all night. Her fiancé was frightened. When it finally got to him, he told her that he was going to be leaving. He even accused her of being insane and said that she was the only reason he was unable to stay. My sibling was a complete mess. She kept threatening me over the phone and text, accusing me of destroying her life once more. I blocked her number after ignoring it until I could stand it no more. She was not deterred by that. She started sending me targeted texts on my husband's phone. She even questioned him about how he could tolerate being married to me since, in her opinion, I just had my own interest in mind. She also insulted my unborn child without holding back. I really wanted to call her and scream at her, but I realized it would only make things worse for both me and my child. Therefore, I also had my husband block her number. For a few days, everything was quiet until my mother called. My mother informed me that my sister had visited her home the previous day. Emily was sobbing uncontrollably and was hysterical. During her engagement, she would not stop talking about how I should remain quiet about my pregnancy. She went on and on about how my very existence had destroyed every part of her life. She claims that because I always seem to get the best of everything, she has had to make many compromises. Given how many of my special events I had to forfeit so she could have her time in the spotlight, I'm not sure where she got the idea. In any case, my mom was struck with insight after hearing my sister vent about how I was to blame for all of her negative experiences. She became aware of Emily's irrational and entitled behavior. I suppose my mother had a real look into my sister's thoughts, and nothing supported her theory that Emily was simply having a rough day. My mother finally had enough of Emily's tirade and confronted her about her insane behavior. That did not sit well with my sister. It worsened her breakdown, if anything. She was even more irate because the only person she believed to be on her side had turned against her. Emily apparently hurried upstairs to my former bedroom after getting up from the couch where they were conversing. Then she started destroying my room. She tore up all my certificates, smashed every trophy I had ever earned, and hurled items off the shelves. My mom was pretty upset about that. When my sister and I moved out, my mom, who is quite nostalgic, made sure to leave our bedrooms exactly as they were, clean only. She was reminded by our rooms that we will always be connected in some way. It was like Emily erasing all of my mom's best memories at once when she tore my room apart. My mother was enraged and heartbroken. She shouted at Emily to get out. Amazingly, my sister grinned at my mother's rage before leaving. Yes, at the moment, my mother isn't a huge fan of Emily. She then called me to express her regret for always defending my sister's actions. She assured me that since Emily's actions were so heinous, I had every right to feel the way I did. To be honest, I never imagined that my mother would genuinely realize how awful Emily was. It was shocking to hear her apologize. However, I felt thankful because I became acutely aware of how much guilt I had been released from. My mother supporting me and not pressuring me to maintain harmony with Emily made me feel so much better. My parents have informed Emily that they no longer communicate with her. Despite my best efforts to support her, my mom has been inconsolable. I spent a lot of time with my hubby assisting my parents in reassembling my room. My dad has stated on multiple occasions that he does not want to see Emily for a long time and is officially furious with her. Emily's fiancé had finally broken up with her by the time I last spoke with him. He broke the lease on their flat, which cost him a lot of money, but he's happier today. I have no idea where Emily is, and to be quite honest, I don't give a damn about her whereabouts or activities. All I want is for her to live far away from me, at least until I give birth. That's all for now. At this moment, I don't believe anything more dramatic could occur, but I suppose only time will tell. I hope that I will only return to provide another update after giving delivery. I want to thank everyone who has read my posts and sent me well wishes until then. Third update. I've returned with what I hope will be the last update, everyone. Despite the crazy circumstances, I'm pleased to announce that I've given birth to a gorgeous, healthy boy. He brightens our days, and to be honest, having him here has helped us see things more clearly. Naturally, though, Emily couldn't let me enjoy this moment without causing a final piece of mayhem. It was unusually quiet for the first several weeks after my birth. When Emily remained distant, I had the hope that she would finally stop bothering me. For the first time in months, my husband and I felt as though we could breathe as we adapted to life with a newborn. My folks had been amazing. My mom even brought over meals to help out, and they kept us updated on a daily basis. It was quiet, and I was really relieved. Especially because my parents had taken care to keep Emily and the trouble she had caused us out of the conversation. However, my mom noted in passing that Emily had been inquiring about the baby a lot during one of their trips. Emily apparently wanted to find out when she could visit my son. Even though my mom was wary since she was aware of Emily's instability, she still felt bad about excluding Emily. However, my dad was adamantly opposed to Emily getting close to us. Neither he nor I had any faith in her. I promised my mother I would give it some thought though, because I didn't want to cause any more drama. A week later, I received a text message from an unknown sender. I read the message and instantly recognized the sender, Emily, even if the number was unknown. There were several insults in the message. She referred to me as a self-centered jerk who was attempting to remove herself from the family by having a child first. It should have been her with the first grandchild, she insisted, and my kid didn't deserve the life I was providing him. I was taken aback. Even after all this time, her jealousy and bitterness remained strong. The last straw was a panicked call from my husband's mother one morning. I was an unfit mother, according to a letter, yes, a real letter, that someone had written her. It contained numerous falsehoods, including claims that I was mentally disturbed, that I was ignoring my child, and even a veiled suggestion that I was abusive. I had my mother-in-law give me a photo of the anonymous letter. It turned out to be Emily's handwriting. My dear mother-in-law was appalled that someone who knew my husband and me well enough could be so explicit in their criticisms against us, even if she didn't believe a word in the letter. She was likewise appalled by the charges and concerned that we might be the target of someone. That was it for me. I was at my breaking point. Emily had gone too far, and I couldn't let her continue to have an impact on my family and my life. My spouse and I decided to return to his home state after talking it over. Although we had discussed it previously, it seemed like the only real way to get out of her madness this time. To ensure Emily would have no way of finding us, we took care to keep the location of our move in his hometown a secret from as many people as possible. We packed up our home and made the major move over the course of the following few weeks. Despite the fact that we would no longer be close to them, my parents supported our choice. My mom was devastated that our relationship had devolved to this point, and my dad was still upset with Emily, but they recognized that we had to act in our son's and our own best interests. Emily, meantime, is finally having to deal with some repercussions. She reportedly started stalking and harassing her ex-fiancé over the phone and in person after he broke up with her. She nearly immediately broke the restraining order he had issued against her. She is currently coping with the legal fallout from that. At this point, my parents have essentially stopped communicating with her, and I must admit that I'm relieved. I'm fine with the fact that I don't know where she is right now. I'm not supposed to fix her, but she needs help. Life has been so much better after the transfer. Surrounded by his family, who have been nothing but encouraging, my husband and I are getting settled in our new house. Without the constant drama Emily brought into our life, I feel like we can now concentrate on raising our baby in a peaceful, caring setting. I cannot say that I will ever completely comprehend Emily's actions, but I've accepted that she is no longer in my life, and that's all right. My child, my marriage, and my peace must all be safeguarded. I had that peace for the first time in what seems like forever. I want to express my gratitude to everyone who has followed along on this crazy adventure. You have no idea how much your support has meant to me, and I'm delighted to report a happy conclusion. Caught husband with my friend, filmed it, and told her husband. Now they're jobless, living off my daughter, who defended him. I contacted her husband after filming my husband and my pal together on our kitchen counter. They currently live with my daughter, who stood up for him, and are unemployed. Without a doubt, the most heartbreaking year of my life was last year. By chance, I found out that Liam, my ex-husband, was having an affair with Abby, my best friend. It was meant to go longer, but I was away for a few days on a work trip. Fortunately, the job was completed ahead of schedule, so I ended up returning home without warning. I didn't bother telling Liam in advance since I wanted to surprise him. I was perplexed when I arrived home and noticed Abby's car in the driveway. I had known Abby since college, and I had grown close to her husband Liam over the years. But Abby never dropped in without first informing me. There were no messages from her or Liam on my phone when I checked it. I heard sounds coming from the kitchen as soon as I walked inside the house. Curious, I moved in the direction of the sound. At that moment, I witnessed Liam and Abby sharing a kiss and engaging in an unimaginable act on the kitchen counter. They didn't even notice me standing there since they were so focused on each other. I stood silently, stunned and unable to comprehend the betrayal. It was heartbreaking to see them in the kitchen, where Liam and I had spent countless family meals and made many memories. I was so shocked that the bag I was clutching fell from my grasp. My best friend was being lovingly touched as if she were his wife by my husband, who had ceased having physical relations with me for the last 3 months and who had called me derogatorily terms like fat pig and hippo, despite the fact that I wasn't overweight. Liam had been forcing me to go to the gym and continually criticizing my body for months, which made me feel insecure. He held me responsible for his loss of interest in me. I had been feeling quite bad about myself and believed that I was unworthy of him. However, I suddenly understood that it was about him and his treachery, not about me. I was broken. The knowledge that the man I loved and the buddy I trusted had plotted to destroy my heart in the most heinous manner was more devastating than the infidelity alone. All of the pain from the previous few months suddenly surfaced. I snatched up my phone without thinking and began recording them. Even though my hands were shaking, I knew I needed evidence. They were still intertwined when I rushed into the kitchen, fueled by wrath. I picked up a skillet I saw on the counter and flung it at Liam to grab their attention. They both jerked in surprise when the pan thudded loudly on him. The expressions on their faces were invaluable as their heads whirled around. When they noticed me standing there, capturing their embarrassment with my phone, their eyes widened in panic. In an attempt to conceal from the camera, Abby frantically covered herself. I approached her and gave her a forceful slap across the face since I was appalled by what she had done. Abby just stood there in shock and embarrassment as the smack reverberated throughout the kitchen. I turned and pushed Liam aside when he attempted to step in. I didn't give a damn. I held my phone in my hand the entire time, documenting everything since it seemed to be the only thing keeping me rooted to the present. I wasn't done yet. I wanted them both to experience the same anguish that I was. I immediately video called Abby's husband Kyle, after stopping the recording. I knew that was the correct thing to do, even if my heart was pounding. He didn't know what was going on when he answered the phone. I flipped the phone so he could see his half-naked wife fumbling in embarrassment as she desperately searched for her clothes. I calmly explained to Kyle what had happened, that I had returned home early from my trip and had seen my husband and his wife together in our kitchen. Kyle was taken aback. His expression of surprise and incredulity reflected how I felt only minutes earlier. Like me when I initially went in, he was speechless and in full shock. Liam screamed at me that I was going too far by making them look bad while attempting to cover his face in embarrassment. I informed Kyle that, like me, he deserved to know the truth. This kind of betrayal shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone. I returned my focus to Abby after that. Tears were running down her cheeks as she continued to apologize, pleading with me to listen. Before I hurt her any further, I interrupted her and urged her to leave my house right now. I had just discovered a betrayal that neither Liam nor she could ever make up for with an apology. I saw Liam stand there, dejected and helpless, as Abby raced out, humiliated and ashamed. I may come across as irritable, but I've put forth a lot of effort throughout my life to establish a prosperous job. To survive, I've never really needed anyone. If my spouse had merely requested a divorce, I could have agreed to it. However, it was unacceptable that he would choose to cheat with my best friend in my own home, which I had paid for. Liam made an effort to express regret and pledged to be a better husband. I began packing his belongings, ignoring him. Regardless of what he said, I told him that we were done and that I was going to file for divorce. He began to rage at me after hearing this, saying that divorce was too harsh and insensitive for what he called a foolish mistake. I threatened to call the police and have him taken from the house in front of all of our neighbors when he attempted to seize my hands to stop me from packing his belongings. I also knew that he would never have confessed or quit cheating if I hadn't discovered him because I knew how much he treasured his reputation. Liam was not even employed at the time. After he was found to have violated business policies, he was fired. I don't want to go into the specifics, but it was so bad that he was dismissed right away after a coworker reported him. I provided for us financially as the main provider while he became a stay-at-home dad. I made 3 times as much as he did, therefore I didn't mind paying for everything on my own, so it wasn't a financial burden. But at the time, I was unaware of how he was spending all that additional time. I guess it makes sense in retrospect. I had known for some time that Abby and Kyle's marriage had been struggling. Abby's problems in her own relationship and Liam's constant presence at home likely gave them ample opportunity to connect on a deeper level. It's difficult to express the anger I feel when I realize that Liam was betraying me in my home and under our roof, with someone I trusted totally, while I was out working hard to maintain our family. Liam, meantime, persisted in arguing with me, claiming that since we had been married for so long, divorce was out of the question and that we need to instead attend couples counseling. He had the audacity to pretend to be the victim, as though I were at fault for even bringing up the idea of our splitting up. Disbelief and rage blazed in my breast as I gazed at him. I questioned him directly about whether he had given the repercussions any thought before choosing to have sex with my closest friend. Did he ever consider what might occur? Did he think that I would simply forgive him, go on, and continue living with him? He blurted out that I shouldn't throw away our marriage for one error because Liam had always been faithful to me throughout the years, his face turning beet red and obviously embarrassed. Then, as though it were less of a betrayal, he attempted to minimize it by claiming that it was just the fourth time he and Abby had shared a bed. What I was hearing was unbelievable. Then he had the gall to accuse Abby of being the cause of the entire situation, saying that she had tempted him because her own marriage to Kyle was failing. The degree of cowardice and denial was unbelievable. The sight of him was so unbearable to me. The man I had once referred to as my husband was obviously no longer someone I could continue to be married to. Following much back and forth, I was able to evict Liam from the residence. Not surprised, Liam turned to our adult daughter Mary for assistance because he had nowhere else to turn. Mary and her father are closer, as I've always known. For as long as I can remember, she has been a daddy's girl, and I've never had any problems with that. Even if they were occasionally closer than she and I were, I cherished the fact that she and him shared such a deep friendship. Mary's voice was confused and worried when she called me. She inquired about the situation and informed me that Liam had phoned her for assistance after I had evicted him due to a silly fight, and that he was now homeless. I sent her the video I had taken of Liam and Abby together and told her the truth. She needed to know exactly why things had come to this point, and I didn't want her to have any doubts about what her father had done. When Mary saw the evidence, she was naturally incensed at her father. She told me she understood why I expelled her father and that she couldn't believe he could have done anything so heinous. But in spite of her rage, she acknowledged that she still hoped I would change my mind, that perhaps, eventually, I would be able to take everything in and figure out a solution. She told me that she would look after Liam for the foreseeable future. I recognized that even though she was deeply offended by his behavior, she was unable to fully turn her back on him. Mary and Liam began calling me alternately in the days that followed, each pleading with me to pardon him for the benefit of the family. Particularly coming from Liam, who was obviously exploiting Mary's love for him to influence her in his favor, it felt like the worst kind of emotional manipulation. I became even more irate when I realized I could see right through it. He tried to use our daughter's affection for him to obtain what he wanted, and I was mad at him for bringing her into this mess. At the same time, Mary's position left me feeling extremely upset and perplexed. I didn't understand why she appeared more concerned with helping her dad than with me during such a trying moment. It hurt more than words can express since it seemed like she didn't see how much I was suffering. I decided to proceed with the divorce in spite of their efforts. I filed for divorce from Liam because I knew it was the correct thing to do and because I wasn't going to be coerced or guilt-tripped into remaining in such a terrible marriage. Abby's spouse, Kyle, was going through the divorce filing procedure at the same time. He was equally saddened as I was, and we grew close as a result of our shared suffering. Having him to talk to made the whole situation a little more tolerable because he was one of the few individuals who actually understood what I was going through. However, to be clear, we have always stayed friends and nothing romantic has ever happened or will ever happen between us. Liam began pleading with me for forgiveness when I eventually delivered the divorce papers to Mary's residence. He made a lot of promises, saying that he would never again look at another woman and that he was prepared to permanently remove Abby from our life. Seeing him attempt to tidy up the mess he had made only after realizing I was serious about leaving was, to be honest, pitiful. Mary, who was present when I served him the papers, asked me to change my mind for her benefit. She told me that she had witnessed firsthand how much her father loved me when she was growing up and that he didn't necessarily love that woman simply because he had accidentally slept with someone else. What I was hearing was unbelievable. I wasn't going to be influenced by her sincere attempts to defend her father and minimize the gravity of his actions. When it became clear that her father had deceived me, not just in any way, but with my best friend and in our own house, I informed her that I had nothing else to think about. After that, there was no turning back. Debating whether or not to give him another chance was a waste of time for me. I was resolved to leave him because he had ruined our marriage. In an attempt to fight with me, Mary asked if I would truly be content without him. I assured her that I would be quite content now that I wouldn't have to worry about my husband having an affair while I was working and earning money. I had not made my decision hastily. There was no amount of explaining or begging that could change my mind. It was amazed how easy the divorce procedure was. Liam was unable to access any of my assets since I had insisted on a prenuptial agreement early in our marriage. I made sure everything went well by hiring the greatest attorney in town, who was well versed in handling situations similar to mine. From the beginning, it was obvious that I would win the case. It felt like a huge burden had been lifted off my shoulders when the divorce was finally finalized. It was almost like I had been released from a jail I was unaware I was in. I had been so utterly enamored with Liam for so long that I failed to understand how much better my life could be without him. His poisonous presence seemed to have been suffocating me and pulling me down like a dead weight. I could now, however, live my life as I saw fit, free from the specter of betrayal and ongoing hurt. People in our network began contacting me more frequently as word got out about what had transpired between Liam and Abby. I started to receive support from friends, relatives, and even acquaintances who wanted to let me know they were there for me. Even Liam's own family made it quite evident that my decision to divorce him was the right one. They were indignant with him and utterly repulsed by his actions. I felt somewhat validated by their support. It was comforting to know that I wasn't the only one who felt this way, that others supported me despite Liam's behavior. But our daughter Mary was the only one who stuck by Liam's side. She still felt sorry for him in spite of everything. Perhaps it was her method of handling the whole event, or perhaps it was the enduring relationship she shared with her father. I made the decision to throw a lavish birthday party this year. After years of marriage to Liam, it was my first birthday without Liam, and I wanted to celebrate my newfound independence. Together with a caterer and a guest list of 50 to 60, my pals and I organized a massive party. I wanted the evening to be unforgettable. Since Kyle had finally divorced Abby after months and months of court proceedings, it goes without saying that he was also invited. Through it all, we had developed a close friendship. Though I made it obvious that Liam was not welcome, I did send Mary an invitation. I couldn't allow him to ruin my birthday night because he was still living with Mary. Everyone appeared to be enjoying themselves as the celebration got underway. The energy was amazing, people were taking shots, and it seemed like the ideal way to celebrate this new phase of my life. Some of my closest friends offered moving comments when it was time to cut the cake, expressing their pride in me for surviving such a difficult year. They talked about how I had been betrayed and how much happier I appeared to be now. The compassion and kindness they displayed moved me. It felt good to feel appreciated and seen by the ones who cared most after everything that had transpired. Unexpectedly, though, Mary got up and declared that she had some things to say. She appeared a little shaky, and I could tell she had been drinking. However, I didn't initially give it much thought because a lot of the people were intoxicated by this time. I assumed she merely wanted to share some lovely recollections or wish me a happy birthday. But Mary started berating me in front of everyone. She talked about how heartbroken he was and how disappointed she was in me for ruining our years of marriage. She spoke loudly, passionately, and angrily. She continued by describing how, as a child, she had always thought her parents were married and how I had broken the illusion by abandoning Liam without even attempting to resolve our issues. When I made the decision to file for divorce, she accused me of being a selfish mother who just had my own interests in mind. It was heartbreaking to hear her statements in front of all of my friends on a night that was supposed to celebrate my pleasure and independence since they were so profound. People were defending me before I could even comprehend what was happening. My buddies, who had personally witnessed my ordeal, weren't going to accept Mary's claims without question. Kyle also raised his voice, telling Mary that her father had deceived me in the most painful way imaginable, therefore she had no right to be upset with me. He reminded her that rather than placing blame where it wasn't due, she need to show me more empathy and compassion as my daughter and a fellow woman. Mary, who was obviously agitated, attempted to counter, but her words were lost in the crowd's mounting annoyance. Some of the attendees were so horrified by her treatment of me, especially on a night like tonight, that they even began booing her loudly. I felt a surge of emotions at that precise moment. My eyes filled with tears as I gazed at Mary, the daughter I had reared and adored. It was me who supported this family from the beginning. Your father, Liam, moved into my home after we were married, and during my pregnancy, he never really stepped up as a parent. When I went into labor, I was the one who endured hours of agony to bring you into the world. When it came to raising you, I was the one who stayed at home, took care of you, and made sure you had everything you needed. Even after I went back to work, I was the one who hired a nanny to assist with your care. Mary, I said in a shaken but firm voice. I worked long hours as the main provider to give you the nice life you eventually came to love. The house over our heads, the food on our table, and all the comforts you and your father enjoyed were all made possible by my income. I went on to explain how I had used my connections to help Mary land an internship and subsequently a position when she had begun looking for work, saying, I did all of that for you while Liam did nothing. He wasn't there to mentor or encourage you in the ways that were important. You seemed to think highly of him despite the fact that he was the entertaining dad who only spent a few hours of his day with you. I've done so much for you and our family, and now I'm the one being held responsible for finally deciding to stand up for myself and end a poisonous marriage. I told her, heartbroken, that she had to go. This was supposed to be my night, a celebration of my strength and resilience, but instead, you've turned it into a scene. Though it hurt, I knew that if Mary couldn't understand why I had to leave Liam, then perhaps the distance between us was what we both needed. Mary threatened to cut off contact with me permanently before she left, but I stood my ground and told her that I was okay with it as long as she was happy with her choice. One of the toughest things I've ever had to do was watch her leave my party, but I knew deep down that this time I had to pick myself, not because I was selfish, but because I was standing up for the life and happiness I deserved, regardless of who attempted to make me feel bad about it. Several of my family members who were at the party have contacted me since this incident, stating that I may have been a little too harsh on my daughter and that I should apologize because they think she is going through a lot and that I embarrassed her by saying all those things in front of everyone when I could have spoken to her privately. First update. It feels good to know I didn't do anything wrong. As a mother, I sometimes feel overwhelmed with guilt. I know I made the right choice, but I still have that nagging mom guilt and occasionally question whether I should have done more to make things work with Liam, just for Mary's sake. Wow, I didn't expect to receive so many direct messages and comments from strangers here, all offering their unwavering support. I'm not sure why Mary is so obsessed with our marriage. She's an only child and didn't likely think her parents would divorce like many of her friends' parents did. To be honest, I didn't think I would end up divorcing my ex either, but Liam's behavior left me with no other option. I couldn't stay in that situation. Second update. A month and a half has passed since my last update, and for those who have been wondering about Liam and Abby, I finally have some exciting news. As I previously mentioned, Abby and Kyle got divorced shortly before my birthday party, and the reason their divorce process took so long, in contrast to mine, was that they share 3 children and never had a prenuptial agreement. What worked for Kyle was that he had solid evidence that Abby had cheated, so she couldn't get alimony, but she and her lawyer fought hard and won child support because of their 3 children, and since Kyle makes a lot of money, the money will be more than enough to support her, and she won't even need to work, and she can likely make ends meet with a part-time job if needed. After deciding to cut off all communication with me after the party, my daughter Mary reached out to me in tears yesterday. It turns out that Liam surprised her a few days after my party by telling her that Abby and her 3 children would be staying with them for the next few weeks. Mary was taken aback because Liam had made this decision without consulting her, and since this was her place, she had to shoulder all of their costs because both Liam and Abby are unemployed. Mary, who works from home, lost all her privacy when Abby and her children moved in, and Liam encouraged her to embrace his new family and talk about how they could all start over together. Liam and Abby would frequently leave their children with Mary to babysit without asking and go out for hours to spend time together in a romantic manner. I was incensed that after weeks of silence and the humiliation she caused me at my birthday party, Mary had the audacity to call me for help in getting rid of Liam and Abby because she was at her wit's end and needed me to talk to them and force them to move out because she was too scared to confront her dad herself. I told her bluntly that she should have thought about the consequences of siding with her cheating dad over me and that she deserved this for doing so. I also made it clear that she should never again contact me. She has been phoning and texting me nonstop since, accusing me of being a poor mother for not supporting her and claiming that it is my responsibility as a parent to defend her. Third update. Although I don't know why she is so blinded by her father, I do agree with the general consensus that my daughter lacks courage when it comes to him, and I have no intention of helping her in any way. It's clear that Liam and Abby are using her as a free babysitter and will keep doing so until she defends herself and ejects them. Given how vehemently Mary had defended Liam at my birthday party, it's really upsetting that he let Abby move in with them. I definitely made the correct decision in divorcing Liam. He would have carried on with his affair with Abby if I hadn't gone. As some of you suggested, I finally sent my daughter an email, and here is what I wrote. Subject. Time to make a decision to marry. It's your home, and you shouldn't have to put up with Dad and Abby acting like they own it. You need to take charge and tell them they can't stay there. I'm still angry about the way you treated me, but that doesn't change the fact that you need to defend yourself right now. You need to set clear boundaries and be firm. I hope you find the strength to stand up for yourself because if you don't, they will keep using you as a cash cow forever. Your dad is not your responsibility. I'll be here if you ever understand how wrong your ways are and want to apologize, but until then, be careful. As it turned out, Kyle had just learned that Abby and Liam had been living together, something Abby had been hiding from him. I also contacted Kyle to let him know about Abby's current living situation and how she has been neglecting the children by making my daughter Mary look after them. She had purposefully refused to allow Kyle to pick up the children from Mary's house ever since she moved in with Liam, insisting that they meet at neutral places, and she had even forced the children to lie to him about their living arrangement. Kyle was shocked and skeptical when he finally found out from mutual friends because he had no evidence, but after I verified the facts, he is now resolved to fight for custody of his children in order to take them away from Abby's custody permanently, and if he is successful, Abby will no longer receive the child support she has been depending on. Without that support, Abby and Liam's financial condition would worsen due to their unemployment. They may encounter major obstacles and, should Mary decide to expel them, they may also find themselves homeless. I only hope my daughter makes the right decision at last. Parents sided with my cheating ex, denied me shelter after divorce. Now, 5 years later, they want back in after hearing about my engagement. After my divorce 5 years ago, my parents lost relations with me. Nick cheated on me with his receptionist. I discovered it when browsing his phone. My suspicions were long-standing, so I checked his texts one day. I realized our marriage was finished then. I struggled because Nick and I were together over a decade before we married. We were childhood sweethearts because his parents were friends of mine. We met and started dating that way. After high school, we had an on and off relationship, but at 22, our parents pressured us to marry. So we did. We often fought after marriage. He cheated even though I never considered it. I left our house that day after learning about his affair because I was hurt. My initial thought was to visit my parents. I assume Nick has already spoken to them. He probably knew I'd go there and wanted to stop me. Amazingly, my parents refused to let me in after he asked. Standing outside their door, I begged to remain for a few days until I found a place. They informed me they wouldn't consider this because Nick was still my husband and we could figure things out. Even after I told them Nick cheated on me, they didn't seem to mind. They said they knew about his adultery because Nick confessed when he called. My folks say one person cannot break a marriage. Thus, they indirectly blamed me for everything. I wasn't surprised since that's always been their attitude toward me. Why I expected their assistance back then is beyond me. I repeatedly told my parents about my marriage issues before Nick's infidelity. I told them I didn't want to stay with him. However, they constantly told me I was too ambitious and didn't give my marriage enough time, hence it failed. When I tried to stay with them that day, they accused me of being more focused on work than my marriage. I was fed up when they blamed me. I left immediately. My friends are nice, so I visited one to tell her about my divorce even though I wasn't ready. She graciously hosted me for 2 weeks. I met with a lawyer, filed for divorce, and looked for an apartment over those weeks. My pals were the only ones who supported me emotionally back then. My parents never spoke to me except to tell me how bad I was for leaving my unfaithful spouse. Nick kept contacting me, insisting we could still work and that marriage counseling would help us. He continued apologizing, as if it would help. Naturally, my parents supported him and urged me to forgive him. Once I cut them out of my life, they ceased trying to contact me. After the divorce, I had no touch with them. I haven't spoken to my parents since, and I don't regret it. When we meet at family functions sponsored by other relatives, we ignore each other. I'm okay with this because they don't regret what they did to me. My partner Charlie and I are engaged after 5 years. My 3 years with him have been some of my best. His restaurant was where we met. I was out with pals when he approached. After a while, I discovered he owned the restaurant. After a few dates, we grew serious. Within weeks, I discovered he owned that restaurant and had a comparable business history. Charlie grew up interested in all things cooking because his father owns one of the state's largest bakery chains. This led to his restaurant launching. Though I was impressed, I didn't care because I'm a working woman and plan to work after marriage. Unlike my parents, I've never wanted his money. After learning about Charlie, they immediately tried to reconnect with me. It happened last week, only days after I announced my engagement on social media. I imagine a relative told my parents I was engaged. They must have researched Charlie and his family. 3 days after my announcement, they emailed me. They congratulated me on my engagement and apologized for their past behavior in their email. They apologized for not contacting me in recent years and wanted to attend my wedding. They avoided talking about Charlie or his family, which was sensible. But I'm not stupid enough to fall for it. It was strange that they contacted me after my engagement, even though they felt awful and wanted to contact me earlier. I declined to respond. When they wanted back in my life, they reached out again, and they did. They revealed themselves in the second email. They told me they had read about Charlie and his family and liked my choice. It made me think they assumed I was dating Charlie for a reason, which was untrue. It worsened. They said they reached out because of Charlie and his family in that email. They stated they were proud of my prestigious lineage. The email was arrogant, and I was irritated that they were primarily interested in the fact that I had secured a place in a wealthy family through marriage. That email's purpose is unknown. They probably didn't understand it made matters worse. I blocked them after reading. A few days of tranquility ended last night. I've lived in Charlie's apartment for a year. Few family members know where I live, and only a few close acquaintances and relatives have visited. They could not have told my parents. I guess my folks found out. When asked, they didn't say how. Our residence was visited last night. Charlie and I were astonished to find them outside. Charlie understands my parents' past, divorce, and reactions, and he doesn't like it. The door was opened by him. He called me over to talk to my parents when he spotted them. Thankfully, Charlie stayed with me. Knowing I was struggling, he held my hand throughout my conversation with my parents. My parents apologized, stating they didn't want to seem more interested in Charlie and his family than my forgiveness. They said they wanted to contact me several times over the last few years but didn't because they knew I'd be furious with them for their earlier behavior. Those were invalid reasons, I told them. They treated my divorce insensitively. I wouldn't have forgiven them if they'd reached out before, and I wouldn't forgive them now. After 5 years of divorce, I no longer need them. I was harsh and told them to leave. I don't know how they obtained my address, but I warned them I'd contact the police if they returned. My dad yelled at me as I turned to close the door. He called me egoistic and cocky, stating I couldn't treat them like way since I was marrying into a rich family. I was angered by that unwarranted and incorrect statement. This wasn't my behavior because I was marrying into his family. No sane person would have said it. I returned it to Dad. I said it wasn't about me marrying into a rich family, but their behavior. Despite 5 years to change, they were still unpleasant, and I avoided them. I knew shutting them out of my life was right, and I never intended to forgive them. After I said that, they addressed Charlie instead of me. They warned him about my attitude problem because it ended my last marriage. They made it clear that Nick had cheated on me with the workplace receptionist he'd known for months. While I was still engaged, they boasted that Nick and this woman were happily married with a child. They said I could never have a happy family since I was always showing off my superiority. I guess I had done this before by focusing too much on work instead of my marriage, and now I was acting superior because Charlie was rich. My superiority complex lost me my first marriage and would cost me my second, they said. Thanks to my fiancé, Charlie ignored their warnings about me. Charlie refused dating advice from folks like my parents. Because I was marrying him and he was rich, he stated I could brag about it. He said that whether I had an attitude problem or not was his concern, and they didn't need to worry about him because we weren't bothered about them. The last thing Charlie said left me stunned. He informed my parents that he was delighted my ex had found love with the lady he had an affair with and that it was indicative that they still supported Nick instead of me after 5 years to reflect on their behavior. He said that it didn't matter because they weren't close to our net worth. He closed the door as they panicked outside. My parents left eventually. I didn't believe it would go farther, but my paternal grandparents called this morning. They lectured me about Charlie and my mistreatment of my parents. Since my grandparents and I have been friendly, it was surprising. Despite being in touch with my parents for 5 years, they have always been neutral about this subject. They instantly thought I should apologize to my parents, especially after Charlie told them about our net wealth. They claimed that my parents had made mistakes, but they had always tried to be good to me. Maybe, but my connection with my parents has always been tense and complicated, even from childhood. I cannot dispute that they have always supported me and tried to make my life comfortable. My grandparents emphasized that I should be grateful to my parents. They cautioned me not to gloat about my wealth, especially since it's not mine. My in-laws are rich. They say I can't brag because I'm still in my parents' income category. I told my grandparents that Charlie had responded that way to my parents, not me. My grandparents ignored my refusal to talk to them. They stated it didn't matter who spoke as long as I permitted it, which humiliated my parents. They said I should have stood up for my parents, even if I didn't want to forgive them. I told my grandparents that my parents had spoken nasty things about me, but they replied it didn't matter. Their sole concern was my behavior, therefore they claimed they will talk to my parents separately about their errors. I got frustrated since the conversation went in circles and they didn't comprehend me. They then revealed that a man who disrespected my family would never appreciate me. Then they hung up. Although I love Charlie and don't think he did anything wrong, my grandparents' reaction has made me wonder about my handling of the incident. Am I responsible for letting my affluent fiancé trash my estranged parents' substandard finances? Update 1. Hello, everybody. I and Charlie appreciate your support and remarks. We feel no obligation to my family, not even an apology, after considering everything. They kept saying I was too smug and arrogant because I married into an affluent family. Charlie and I will act as they accuse us. After talking to friends and reading the comments, I don't think I or my fiancé did anything wrong. No need for guilt. Charlie explicitly stated that he will not apologize to anyone who has disrespected me, not once but repeatedly. Even their last visit to our residence was insulting. They persisted after I told them I didn't want to discuss or forgive them and tried to make me appear awful for rejecting their nonsense. Charlie said he knew my parents were bad based on what I told him before. After meeting them, he said they were terrible and suggested I never forgive or speak to them. Totally agree with him. Charlie made a good point when I told him my grandparents' words. He told me my grandparents had avoided the turmoil because it was convenient. When my parents were hurt, they jumped in. They were okay as long as I hurt. After their darling son was offended, they pursued me. Charlie advised me to examine this before acting on their advice. I considered it. He made a valid point. When I tried to talk to my grandparents about my relationship with my parents for 5 years, they said I needed to figure it out alone and didn't want to become involved. I stopped venting to them since I knew they wouldn't listen. Looking back, their neutrality seemed to be a strategy to keep diplomatic and on good terms with us. Since they clearly prioritize my father over me, I believe they don't plan on being diplomatic anymore. I was dumb to expect other behavior. Anyway, I'm delighted Charlie's here. He appears angrier than me about this, which I find endearing. It shows his love for me. Update 2. Hello everybody. My grandparents called me a week ago to say I was incorrect in how I handled my parents and wanted to apologize. Since I didn't react last week, they contacted me again. Since I blocked my parents and grandparents, they created a new email account and wrote me an email. My handling of the problem disappointed them. They were surprised that I had blocked them because they had always tried their best to be on my side during the past 5 years. However, they agreed that staying diplomatic was a mistake and that they should have informed me that my parents were right about everything and that I had an attitude problem to fix. Their argument was repeating my parents' unsubstantiated assertions. They basically repeated my parents' criticism since they couldn't find a rationale. Naturally, they made it personal for no reason. Even though they had always said my parents and I had valid but different perspectives and couldn't tell who was right or wrong. That email was annoying. After seeing it, Charlie said he was glad we hadn't apologized or contacted them because they didn't deserve it. He claimed they were greedy and that my family had an attitude problem, not me. I didn't reply to that email and won't. I don't want to dispute or prove my point. They've already made me the villain, so they'll never trust me. They'll keep making excuses to blame me. It probably worries them that I'm marrying Charlie, getting affluent, and cutting them out of my life, so they can't benefit from my marriage. Ironic, because Charlie and I believe that if they wanted forgiveness, they should have been nicer and boosted our egos. Bitterness and resentment have made things worse for them without them realizing it. Maybe they do. They're indifferent. No matter what, they're out of my life. Third update. My last update was 2 months ago. Because I wasn't concerned anymore, I forgot about my parents' and grandparents' problems. I became busy organizing my wedding and doing other things after they didn't contact me again. My parents returned to my place 3 days ago. Charlie was away this time. When I saw them outside, I didn't open the door. I told them through the door that I didn't want to argue again. I told them to leave or I would call the police, which would be very bad for them. Despite my concerns, my parents stayed. My dad said he didn't expect me to forgive or accept them back. He wanted to apologize for how he and my mom acted last time. He added that after much consideration, they recognized they had made things worse by refusing to accept that I wasn't ready to forgive them. Now, they wanted me to know they were sorry for their repeated failures and would apologize until I forgave them. My mother said they would wait the rest of their life for my forgiveness. That was a big statement. I felt forced to open the door. I told them I didn't know what to say or how to feel. All I knew was that I wasn't ready to deal with them. I calmly told them they didn't need to apologize anymore. I needed some space from them. In a few years, I might contact them. For now, I desire solitude. I'm not sure if I'll ever contact them, but I said that to lighten the situation. It improved their mood. Even if it took 2 years, my mother stated she would like to hear from me. She hoped I'd forgive them one day. She cried and stated that she and my father had always been too arrogant and proud to accept they weren't the finest parents, especially after my divorce. They said they were misled into thinking I had an attitude problem. Since then, they'd been confused about me. Sometimes thinking I was right and sometimes Nick was right. This is why they felt their attitude toward me was constantly inconsistent and confusing. Personally, I don't accept that excuse. God, I'm their daughter. My personality should be well known. They didn't spend much time with me as kids or teens. Not knowing me well isn't unexpected. That's their fault, not mine. I didn't want to start a major ordeal, so I just informed them what occurred and couldn't be altered. I added that if they wanted me to forgive them, they should stay away from me and let me heal. They departed quietly without saying anything. When Charlie returned home, I informed him how I handled the matter and what my parents and I discussed during their visit. He said the scenario may have been worse but was thankful it wasn't. I'm trying not to think about my parents because I don't know how to feel. My wedding planning is my priority, and I hope it goes well. Fourth update, hey, I got married last week and had a blast. Naturally, my immediate family did not attend since they were not invited. I invited my maternal grandparents, but they reside out of state and my grandpa is sick. As a result, few family members attended the wedding, but I didn't mind. Charlie was with me, and his family welcomed me as one of their own. That's really appreciated. My parents called me from a burner phone 2 days after the wedding. They said my cousins told them about my wedding. Even though I didn't want them at the wedding, they claimed they were thrilled for me and wished me joy in my new life. I thanked them and said nothing else. Many of you may say I shouldn't have hosted them during their last visit. Some may say I should have called the police. But that would have simply increased anger and hatred, causing more drama. I like this technique better. I don't think I'll ever be close to my parents, but we don't fight. Neutrality seems ideal for everyone. Mill demanded half my salary and accused me of trapping her son when I announced my pregnancy. Am I the asshole for calling off the wedding and leaving? Gary, 30 million, and I, 28 feet, were set to get married next week, but after an odd talk with his mother, Linda, 55 feet, everything changed. I need help regarding my current circumstances because I feel totally lost. 2 years ago, Gary and I met at a birthday celebration through mutual acquaintances. Despite the fact that I was gregarious and extroverted and he was shy and introverted, we clicked right away. In contrast to my commercial profession, Gary was a kind high school teacher who cherished his kids. I like Gary's shyness and his tendency to keep to himself, even though we met at a party. He was just being himself, in contrast to other guys who made an effort to impress me. After 6 months of dating, our relationship took a serious turn. After spending a lot of time together, we began discussing moving in together. At that point, Linda, Gary's mother, proposed that we move in with them in order to save money for the future. Gary, who had always lived with his parents and didn't see anything wrong with it, was totally on board. Although I appreciated my independence, I was apprehensive, but the financial consideration made sense. Linda claimed that it would be more cost-effective for us to live in the large 5-bedroom home she and her husband Tom occupied. I moved in, reluctantly giving up my flat. Linda first came across as quite kind. She included me in family activities and prepared our favorite dishes every time. She was a mother who stayed at home and took delight in caring for her family. Tom, her spouse, was a construction worker, although he was seldom present and hardly talked. Linda was in charge of the home and made all the choices. In fact, the first few months of living there were enjoyable. Linda handled all of the cooking, cleaning, and laundry. I worked hard at my job and needed to relax when I got home, so she wouldn't even let me help. Gary and I made a small contribution toward groceries and utilities, but it was insignificant in comparison to what I had previously spent. Gary and I became closer after we moved in together, and we began discussing getting married. Gary used his grandmother's ring to pop the question on my birthday last year. Linda took up the wedding arrangements right away, seemingly ecstatic about the engagement. She seemed so happy that I agreed with all of her many suggestions. Everything appeared to be going according to plan until last Thursday, when we decided to have the wedding the next week. Linda wanted to talk about something significant regarding the wedding, so she asked to have coffee with me alone. I thought it had to do with last-minute plans or a custom in the family. During my lunch hour, we met at a cafe close to my workplace. Following a brief conversation about wedding planning, she abruptly made an odd request. She informed me that I would have to deposit half of my monthly income into her account after we were married. I was totally taken aback and perplexed. She explained that it was for Gary's and my financial stability when I questioned why. I've already talked to Gary about it, and he agreed, she said. What I was hearing was unbelievable. She decided to bring this up a week before the wedding, even though I had been living with them for over a year and had been organizing it for months. After telling her that I needed some time to consider it, I walked out of the cafe. I had so many questions running through my head. Why hadn't Gary brought this up earlier? Given that we were already helping with household expenses, why would she want my money? I questioned Gary about it when I got home that night. After becoming somewhat anxious, he eventually acknowledged that his mother had discussed this with him a month prior. She had warned him that we would not be allowed to reside in her home after marriage if we didn't accept her conditions. Gary explained that he kept it from me because he was afraid we would have to move out and we weren't yet able to afford our own house after all the wedding-related costs. The fact that Gary withheld this information from me for a month upset me. We had always told one another the truth about everything. We would speak things out even if we didn't agree. This seemed like a total breach of confidence. Gary said that his mother only had our best interests in mind, but I failed to see how withdrawing half of my pay was beneficial to us. I've been feeling anxious about the whole affair because Gary and I are the only ones who know that I'm 2 months pregnant. We were glad of it even if it wasn't planned. After the baby was born, we had agreed that I would temporarily leave my job to care for our child. Gary had been in favor of this choice, and we had begun budgeting appropriately. He obviously hadn't discussed any of this with his mother though. I haven't yet informed my parents about Linda's request because they reside in another state. I don't want to worry them because they had spent a lot of money on this wedding. My best buddy suggests that I speak with Linda once more in an effort to better comprehend her viewpoint, but I must admit that I'm afraid to confront her by myself. 7 days remain till the wedding, and I'm at a loss. Gary continues telling me that I should just accept Linda's terms for the time being and that I'm overreacting. I think this is only the beginning, but he says we can work anything out later. What else will she demand if she is making these demands prior to marriage? And I start to doubt everything because Gary kept this from me for a month. I need guidance. Am I reacting too strongly to this circumstance? Since we need a place to live, should I just accept her requirements or should I refuse to back down and run the danger of destroying our relationship? First update. I made the decision to speak with Linda once again and inform her about the pregnancy after reading all of your comments. Some indicated that she might change her mind about the entire pay issue if she knew about her impending grandchild. In retrospect, I see how foolish I was to believe that. Because I didn't feel comfortable talking to Linda by myself again, I wanted Gary to be there. He excused himself by saying he had extra lessons at school and had to stay back when I told him this morning that I was going to notify Linda about the pregnancy. Since it's spring break, I thought it was strange, but I didn't press the issue. After Linda finished preparing dinner yesterday evening, I ended up meeting her by myself in her kitchen. As usual, Tom was in the living room watching TV. Totally unaware of anything going on in the home. Despite my nervousness, I made the decision to end it now. I began by informing her that I had some significant news to share with her. I was expecting her granddaughter, who was 2 months along. I thought she would at least show a little excitement or joy, but she had the exact opposite reaction. She yelled so loudly that I'm sure the neighbors could hear her as her cheeks flushed with rage. She accused me of deceiving her son with this pregnancy and called me manipulative. She claimed that I had orchestrated the entire incident to damage their family's reputation. I was taken aback because Gary and I had lived in their home for 2 years together and were being married in less than a week. Was anyone being trapped by this pregnancy? She went utterly crazy when I told her that I was going to quit my job when the kid was delivered. She began to pace the kitchen and said that since they required my pay for household necessities, she would not allow me to resign. She dropped a bombshell when I reminded her that I had never committed to pay her my wage in the first place. She informed me that months prior to his proposal, Gary had already promised her my pay. I had the impression that I had been punched in the stomach. Gary had been cooperating with her intentions all along and was aware of them. But Linda wasn't finished. She continued to talk about how my unintended pregnancy had ruined everything. She claimed that she was only permitting our marriage because I made a nice living and that she saw no need in the wedding now that I intended to resign from my position. I immediately called Gary, but he didn't answer. Despite my repeated attempts to call, the call went directly to voicemail. When he eventually got home at around 9 p.m., I waited for him to do so, and Linda filled him in on everything. I thought he would defend me and our child, but he chose to support his mother. He suggested that I should have used birth control more carefully and that my desire to resign from my work was causing needless turmoil. It was unbelievable to me that this was the same Gary who, only a few days prior, had been thrilled about the baby, who had even begun researching baby names online and had helped me cope with morning sickness. He seemed to be a totally different person when his mother was there. Gary slept on the couch as I sobbed in our room all night. He never once came to see how I was doing, even at that point. When I tried to speak with him again this morning before he left for school, he suggested that I either accept his mother's demands or put off the wedding until we could work things out. He didn't even admit that his mother had treated me rudely or that, because of our child, she had essentially threatened to call off our wedding. As I give it more thought, I see that Gary has never really challenged his mother on any issue. He advised me to dress more modestly when she made comments about my attire. He said she was merely attempting to assist when she rearranged our room without asking. He suggested I should be thankful she was doing all the work when she altered our wedding arrangements without telling me. He constantly told me to change or offered justifications for her actions. I contacted my mother and told her everything since I was at my breaking point. She was so angry that she promised to get me a plane home right away. I pleaded with her not to exacerbate the situation by coming here herself to confront Linda. To help me decompress, she invited me to come stay with her for a few days and pack some clothing. This is being typed from my mother's home. Gary claims that I'm being dramatic and hormonal due to the pregnancy, and he has been phoning and messaging me nonstop. He argues that by departing in this manner, I'm embarrassing him and that I should return home to make amends with his mother for causing her distress. My mother believes that I should give this marriage a lot more thought. She claims that if Linda is making such demands prior to marriage and Gary is unable to resist her at this time, things will only worsen once they are married. She is concerned about how they will handle the baby and me. I'm not sure if the wedding should take place at all, and it's in 5 days. I can't help but think of how fast Gary changed when he had to decide between me and his mother. When she starts making more demands after marriage, what will happen? Will my child witness their father consistently picking their grandmother above their mother as they grow up? Second update. I canceled the wedding. I eventually found the strength to make this tough choice after spending 2 days at my mom's house contemplating everything. Gary unexpectedly came up at my mom's place the night after I posted my last update. My mother had gone to fetch groceries, so she wasn't home. At first, I believed he had come to express regret or at least, to try to comprehend my perspective. Rather, he began scolding me about how staying at my mom's house was embarrassing him and his family. He claimed that family members had begun to phone and inquire as to why I wasn't home, and he wasn't sure how to respond. His demeanor only exacerbated the morning nausea I was already experiencing. I informed him up front that unless he defied his mother and agreed with my choice about the child, I would not marry him. I saw his true colors in his remark. We needed a place to live, so he suggested that if I truly cared about our child, I would continue working and give his mother what she desired. He said he wasn't going to leave his parents' house because I was being difficult when I proposed that we rent a tiny apartment instead. I realized then that Gary would never change. He would be his mother's puppet forever. I returned my engagement ring to him after taking it off. He became irate and accused me of selfishness and self-centeredness. I understood the irony of what he was saying. I questioned him about how he could allow his mother to treat his child's mother in such a disrespectful manner. He insisted that I was overreacting even though he had no response. I began phoning all of our guests to cancel things the following morning, my hands shaking. 3 days before the wedding was scheduled, it was embarrassing to have to tell everyone why it was canceled. While some were judgmental, others were understanding. My parents helped me deal with all the vendors and cancellations and were really encouraging. The actual drama began at that point. Linda, the head of Gary's family, began circulating rumors among our acquaintances. I called off the wedding because they told everyone I had cheated on Gary. They claimed that I was deceiving Gary about the pregnancy. In fact, some common acquaintances who had known us for years took them at face value and ceased communicating with me. I started getting angry messages from Linda. She claimed that I had destroyed her son's life and that she would see to it that I felt bad about my choice. She started making up new social media profiles to torment me, and I blocked her number when she threatened to report my unstable behavior to my employer. In the end, I blocked their whole family. Gary kept attempting to reach me at several numbers. Occasionally, when he was upset, he would accuse me of being selfish. At other times, he would beg, stating we could resolve the issue, but he never confronted his mother or expressed regret for keeping things from me. While Gary and Linda were at a family gathering, my mother assisted me in moving all of my belongings out of their home. Tom was present, but he did nothing but observe in silence while we packed everything. However, his assistance in carrying several boxes to the car was perhaps the most involvement he had ever showed in a family matter. I feel like I can breathe for the first time in weeks now that I'm back at my mom's house. Although some people are criticizing me for being unmarried and pregnant, I would much rather be a single mother than be forced to live in a marriage where my husband and his mother run my entire life. Surprisingly, my employer has been sympathetic to my plight. After I told my manager about it, she made arrangements for me to work from home because I've been experiencing severe morning sickness. At least I haven't yet had to deal with my coworkers' inquiries. I squandered 2 years with someone who couldn't decide between his mother and his unborn child, and that's the only thing that hurts. Even though it was a tough choice, I know it was the right one. My child deserves better than a grandmother who treats them like a bother and a father who is incapable of advocating for them. Third update. Since my last update, everything in my life has changed drastically. Last month, I gave birth to Emma, my gorgeous baby girl. Both physically and emotionally, the pregnancy was challenging. During the last trimester, I experienced high blood pressure and terrible morning sickness. My mother was incredible. In order to support me during the last few months of my pregnancy and the initial weeks following delivery, she took a 3-month leave of absence from her employment. Through some mutual connections, Gary learned of Emma's birth. The day after I gave birth, he and Linda arrived at the hospital. Only my family was permitted to visit, as I had made clear on my admissions paperwork. Linda made quite a commotion in the hospital lobby when the nurses intervened. She was yelling about my deprivation of her son's child and her rights as a grandma. They had to be escorted out by hospital security. After this episode, my doctor was worried about my blood pressure and kept me under monitoring for an additional day. Gary's attorney called me regarding custody arrangements a week after we returned home from the hospital. Linda had been writing on Facebook about filing a lawsuit, so I wasn't shocked. We're now working out the custody details, and I have my own lawyer. According to my lawyer, Gary's petition for 50-50 custody is improbable because he never offered any support during my pregnancy. I benefit from the fact that we have records of Linda's hospital harassment and all of her threatening texts. 2 months ago, something unexpected happened. Gary's calm father, Tom, paid me a secret visit. He claimed to have wanted to speak with me for months, yet he appeared anxious. He told me something startling and expressed regret for not speaking up sooner. 5 years prior, Linda had done similar things to Gary's ex-girlfriend Sarah. Although Sarah left Gary before the engagement, she had insisted on receiving a portion of her inheritance. Tom claimed that although Linda had threatened to divorce him if he meddled in family affairs, he had wished to warn me. Last week, I started a new job. With a 30% pay increase, it's actually a better job than the one I had before. Emma's management is greatly aided by the company's excellent maternity benefits and flexible scheduling. While I'm at work, my mom has been fantastic with the baby. It offers her something to look forward to each day, she claims. Linda hasn't given up yet. She makes fictitious social media profiles in order to reach me and make offensive remarks about me. She even made an attempt to get in touch with my new employer, but fortunately, my manager was sympathetic to the circumstance. After hearing Tom's side of the story, a few of our mutual acquaintances who had first accepted their lies apologized, but I'm avoiding contact with anyone associated with that family. I return every gift that Gary sends Emma. He sent us a giant teddy bear last week along with a statement expressing how much he missed us. I sent it with a message requesting that he only speak with our attorneys. I refuse to allow him or his mother to use presents and kind words to re-enter our life. Emma deserves better than a father who was unable to defend her before she was even born and a grandmother who views her as a problem. Unless there is a significant development in the custody case, I doubt I will be updating again. In retrospect, I'm so happy I followed my gut and called off the wedding. Sometimes breaking up with someone right before marriage is preferable to being in a dominating marriage where you lose your independence and dignity. Emma is currently waking up from her slumber. I want to express my gratitude to everyone for clearing my confusion 6 months ago. Even when life isn't perfect, what matters most is that we're happy. Golden child sister canceled my flight, took a family vacation without me, but her manipulations finally caught up to her. I, 28F, am employed as a paralegal at one of the leading legal practices in San Francisco that focuses on civil litigation and family law. I find it ironic that as I cope with my own family drama, I spend my days painstakingly recording evidence for family disagreements. I assist lawyers in constructing cases against manipulative family members who take advantage of and misuse their relatives' trust on a daily basis. I've gotten really excellent at identifying manipulation patterns and obtaining proof, which will soon prove to be more useful to me personally than I could have ever imagined. Let me tell you a little about myself. My parents have always regarded Olivia, my younger sister, who is 23F, as their miracle kid. Before Olivia was born, my mom had suffered 3 terrible miscarriages, and the agony of those losses almost caused their marriage to fail. For them, Olivia became a symbol of rebirth and optimism when she eventually appeared. Every time she walked into the room, my dad, 56M, a typically quiet high school teacher, would light up. My 54-year-old mother, who owns a small bakery, referred to her as their angel on earth. At first, I understood. Overprotection can result from trauma. I was 5 years old when Olivia was born, and I had seen my parents go through a difficult time. I could see why they showered her with attention. My parents didn't see, or didn't want to see, how Olivia turned their adoration into a weapon. Even the most seasoned attorneys I deal with would be impressed by her remarkable ability to manipulate emotions. As a child, Olivia demonstrated a superb ability to turn any circumstance to her favor. She knew exactly how to manipulate our parents like a fiddle, and her victim act was worthy of an Oscar. She began manipulating me in minor ways, accusing me of pushing her when she fell, which I never did, blaming me for broken toys, and making herself weep whenever I received attention. However, her strategies grew increasingly cunning and vicious as we grew older. One instance that truly reveals her actual nature comes to mind. Our grandma gave me this vintage pocket watch, which has been in the family for many generations, on my 16th birthday. Our great-great-grandfather, who moved from Ireland, owned the exquisitely built watch from the 1890s, which had withstood 2 world wars. For me, the story behind it was everything. Despite receiving a brand new iPhone as a special gift, Olivia pitched a fit because she wanted it too. Remember, this was back when iPhones were still popular. She chose to discipline me when I refused to share it because, after all, it was a birthday present. She sneaked into my room later that night and placed a giant house spider in my pillowcase since she knew I was afraid of spiders because of an event at summer camp when I was a kid. Olivia was the ideal choice to play the worried sister when I woke up screaming and had something crawling on my face. She even succeeded in giving my parents the impression that she had come to my aid right away. Only later, when we were by ourselves, did she confess what she had done, flashing that smug look I had been so accustomed to. A week later, the watch vanished inexplicably. I knew Olivia had taken it, even though we never discovered evidence. She went on the defensive when I accused her, saying that I was jealous of her new iPhone and was only attempting to harm her. The watch never appeared, and I was grounded for a week by my parents for making false accusations. Then there came my junior year, when I had my first serious crush on a man named Jason. We had been studying together for months when he was in my AP chemistry class. I finally had the bravery to ask him to a movie. I spent hours choosing the ideal ensemble, which included a brand new blue dress that I had been saving for months at my part-time job at the neighborhood library. Olivia accidentally spilled her grape juice all over it as soon as Jason entered. She amused him with uncomfortable tales from my early years, such as a particularly embarrassing instance from a school performance in which I had stage fright and became wet myself, while I was upstairs getting changed. I was 6 years old. The entire atmosphere was destroyed by the time I returned downstairs in my backup attire. Olivia had somehow made herself the focus of attention, and Jason could hardly look at me. Jason changed his study partner the following day, and I never heard from him again. She ruined more than just my social life though. Just hours before the due date, Olivia accidentally erased my almost completed common application essay from our shared family computer when I was applying to colleges in my senior year. The hurried version likely cost me admission to a number of prestigious universities, and I had to spend the entire night revising it. Maybe you should have saved a backup copy. Isn't that what smart people do? She simply shrugged when I challenged her. This trend persisted during our adolescence. My mom would always add, "You know how sensitive she is after everything we went through to have her." No matter how I tried to explain Olivia's behavior to our parents, they would dismiss it with a remark like, "She's just young," or, "You need to be more understanding of your sister." I eventually gave up trying. What was the purpose? I was merely the one who caused trouble by speaking up, and Olivia was their best child. Despite being an English teacher who takes great satisfaction in his ability to analyze critically, my dad lost his sight of Olivia. All day long, he would point out deceit and manipulation in Shakespeare's characters to his students, but he was unable to recognize the same trends occurring in his own household. Even worse was my mother. Being Olivia's mother had essentially become her entire identity, as though Olivia's most recent accomplishments, the majority of which I subsequently learned she had lied about or stolen credit for from others, were more significant than her own prosperous bakery business. I was eager to get out of that house by the age of 18. I concentrated on my studies, was accepted to a reputable college across the nation, and left right away. In order to avoid having to approach my parents for money, I worked 2 jobs. As a research assistant and at the college library. I understood that any financial dependence would offer Olivia grounds to criticize me. It was refreshing to go to college. For the first time, I could be myself without Olivia constantly putting me down. However, she made it plain that I wasn't welcome whenever I returned home during breaks, which got fewer and farther between. She would ignore me during meals, snoop through my belongings while I wasn't looking, and cut me off in any conversation I attempted to have with our parents. She even once accessed private customer files on my work laptop, which may have led to my termination if someone had discovered it. How did she react when I challenged her? Our parents, as usual, just shrugged and said, "You shouldn't have left it lying around." They also advised us to get along. After that, I started staying in school or spending my breaks with friends instead of going home. After dedicating myself to my studies, I finished with honors and immediately enrolled in law school. Even my law school graduation was skipped because Olivia had a slight cold and needed them. My parents seemed to be okay with my absence, justifying it as me becoming independent. I am currently 28 years old and have established a prosperous profession as a paralegal at one of the leading law companies in San Francisco. The irony that I spend my days recording the betrayals of other people's families while attempting to forget my own is not lost on me. I specialize in family court matters. Over the past 5 years, I haven't really interacted with Olivia much, only having polite, quick conversations around significant holidays, when I bothered to show up at all. With sporadic phone conversations and generic birthday cards, my connection with my parents grew more and more strained. Then, when my dad suffered a near-fatal heart attack a few months ago, everything changed. I threw everything down and ran home when my mother called to tell me. I was on the next trip home after she uttered my name with an urgency I had never heard before. "Madison, please come. He's asking for you." Her words broke through years of bitterness. Dad was stabilized and lived, but he was badly shaken by the event. As I observed him battling with the several tubes and monitors connected to him during one of our conversations in the hospital, he expressed his desire to spend more time with his loved ones. He said, "Life's too short," in a voice that was weaker than I had ever heard. In addition to recommending lifestyle modifications like regular exercise, the doctors had prescribed a rigorous pharmaceutical schedule. My throat constricted as he spoke about second chances and regrets. I chose to stay for a few days because I could see his point of view. Perhaps since I hadn't taken a sick day in 5 years and had accumulated enough goodwill to last a lifetime, my employer was unexpectedly kind. I could work from home, conducting research and preparing documents from my former bedroom. But my return to the house did not sit well with Olivia. She demonstrated this by moving my laptop during client calls, playing loud music while I was attempting to work, and accidentally unplugging my monitor during crucial video conferences, among other tiny acts of violence. Then one morning at breakfast, Dad suggested that the family go on a trip. He added in a voice full of enthusiasm, "It's been years since we all went somewhere together," reminding me of the father I knew before Olivia seized control of our lives. He wanted to travel to Hawaii, which we had discussed going to when I was younger, before Olivia, before the miscarriages, before everything changed. At first, I was hesitant because hanging out with Olivia for a long period wasn't really exciting. Knowing how much it meant to Dad, though, I consented. During that brunch, I noticed hope in his eyes, something I hadn't seen in years. Although Olivia seemed more interested in eating nails than going on a trip with me, she was unable to refuse Dad's proposition while he was still recuperating from a heart attack. He booked flights and lodging, taking care of everything. I made sure everything was in order, asked for time off, and even prepared case papers ahead of time to make sure nothing would stop me from going. However, I learned that my flight had been inexplicably canceled when we arrived at the airport. I felt angry and perplexed. We went to the airline desk to find out what had happened because Dad insisted he had purchased and paid for all 4 tickets. Only my ticket had been denied, I thought as I looked at Olivia. It was the same sneaky smile I'd seen so many times before, the one she'd worn after the spider incident, after she'd ruined my date with Jason, after she'd gained every little triumph over me. I went straight up to her. I said, "You did this, didn't you?" Mom leapt to Olivia's support. "Your sister would never do something like that." Dad then made an effort to make things better. "It's probably just an airline error. Let's not point fingers." As she mentioned that my ticket had been canceled yesterday from my parents' home IP address while I was at work, the airline lady appeared uneasy. I was taken aback. Since there were no other flights that day, it didn't seem like a good idea to fly alone the following day. They still refused to accept Olivia as she truly was, despite all the evidence that pointed to her. After hesitating and speculating that they might postpone and reschedule, Dad began to talk about how long it had been since he had taken a holiday, how the doctors had warned that stress was harmful for his heart, and that perhaps it would be best to keep quiet. Mom remarked, "You travel so much for work anyway," without looking at me. "You're not really missing out." Their remarks hurt. To once again prioritize Olivia's comfort over my involvement in the family, they appeared to be requesting permission to depart without me. "You're welcome to go without me," I remarked in a cold tone as I made my way back to San Francisco, determined to move on from the entire situation. I had no idea that Olivia's reputation as a golden child would ultimately bring about her demise. Something changed inside of me as I stood alone in the airport watching my parents and Olivia board their aircraft. I learned the value of paperwork, case building, and waiting for the proper opportunity during my years of paralegal employment. For years, I had been surreptitiously gathering proof of Olivia's manipulation, including witness statements from former classmates and neighbors, emails, texts, and security camera footage. It was time to exploit my professional expertise for my own benefit. In that airport terminal, I decided to stop being the understanding elder sister. No more ignoring the situation. The culmination of years of gathering evidence of Olivia's deceptive actions was imminent, and she wouldn't even anticipate it. I knew better than anyone because I worked as a paralegal. The truth always comes out in the end, and I would be prepared when it did. First update. I never thought my mother would call me in such a frenzy so quickly. As I listened to her frantic voice describe what had transpired at their Hawaii resort, my hands began to shake. Their flawed family vacation had devolved into a nightmare that would ultimately reveal Olivia's true character. It started when Dad's heart medicine started to inexplicably stop working. After 3 days of closely monitoring his medication, my parents discovered that 3 to 4 pills per day were routinely disappearing. Initially, they thought he was misplacing his pills or taking them without remembering, which was a worrying but reasonable explanation considering his recent health problems. My father insisted on looking everywhere in their suite, but at first my mother didn't accept the obvious implications. Nothing was discovered until my mother was at the pool and went to borrow sunscreen from Olivia's room. All of Dad's missing heart pills were in Olivia's bedside drawer, as was his backup prescription bottle, which had reportedly been misplaced during packing. Olivia didn't even attempt to refute it when pressed. "You shouldn't have invited her in the first place," she yelled, alluding to their original plan to include me. Because this trip was supposed to be about us, the real family. Instead, she launched into a diatribe about how I had ruined their perfect family vacation. Things quickly got out of hand. Olivia started flinging objects around the hotel room, breaking multiple glasses and a lamp. She reacted angrily to my father's attempts to soothe her, accusing him of being weak for attempting to reintroduce that drama into their lives and claiming that his heart attack was really a ploy to get attention. When hotel security received complaints about the noise, they weren't impressed by Olivia's performance, unlike when our parents were there. When she refused to stop and started saying that everyone would pay, the hotel staff phoned the police. As my mother explained how she was handcuffed and brought away, I could hear her yelling in the background. "She kept saying it was all your fault," my mother wept on the phone. "But Madison, she could have killed your father. Those medications, he needs them." The doctor said even missing a single day could trigger another heart attack. I remained calm and professional. I had learned how to maintain my composure in the face of internal turmoil via years of handling high-stress legal circumstances. I gave the order, "Mom, I need you to do exactly what I say. Take photos of where you found the medication. Document everything. Use your phone to record any conversations with hotel staff or police. Don't delete anything Olivia sends you." The voice of my mother broke. "The police want to press charges. They're saying it's attempted domestic assault or something. Should we get her a lawyer?" "No," I firmly said. "Let me handle everything from here." This was the kind of thing I had been planning. Olivia was taken out of custody 24 hours later, but her freedom would not last long. In her room, the police had discovered more than just cardiac medication. They also found a number of stolen goods, such as cell phones and wallets, from other hotel visitors. While our parents were at the beach or pool, she had been methodically breaking into other rooms. Olivia wasn't finished though. As soon as she got back to the hotel, she started planning her retaliation. She essentially left our parents stranded in Hawaii without access to cash or identity by hiding their wallets and passports. Her message was unmistakable: she would ensure that everyone suffered alongside her if she were going down. I started working with the hotel security personnel right once and made arrangements for emergency monies to be supplied via Western Union. As soon as I described the problem, they were unexpectedly supportive. As it happens, Olivia was already under suspicion by the hotel for acting strangely around the rooms of other visitors. When she was seen trying to enter the hotel's medical storage facility, which had emergency cardiac drugs, on security tape, it was the last straw. She claimed she was only seeking for aspirin when staff confronted her, but the keypad's access log revealed several unsuccessful attempts to enter a restricted location. As I was coordinating with the hotel security staff and local law enforcement that evening, Olivia began sending me more bizarre texts. She said that during her prior snooping, she had obtained private information from my laptop and threatened to disclose it to my company. She was unaware that years prior, I had already reported and documented her unauthorized access attempt to the security team at my company. The truth was shattering my parents, who were finally recognizing Olivia for who she truly was. Dad's blood pressure was dangerously high due to the stress, and Mom was crying uncontrollably. While the court case started, I made arrangements for them to relocate to a separate hotel far from Olivia. During our most recent phone conversation, my father observed, "We ought to have paid attention to you years ago." I had never heard his voice sound older and more worn out. "We couldn't realize we were losing you instead because we were so terrified of losing her." Olivia is currently being investigated by the police. She faces severe charges based on my documenting of her prior actions as well as the recently obtained hotel proof. Karma can occasionally operate through the legal system. Second update. Since my last report, things have drastically become worse. Olivia was released on bail after being charged with several counts of stealing and reckless endangerment, with the stipulation that she must return to our parents' home and attend required mental health assessments. But what transpired next demonstrated that things were much worse than any of us had thought. Olivia transformed our parents' home into a psychological battleground without expressing any regret. She started by methodically deleting family pictures, but just those that featured me. Olivia said she was cleaning the house of negative energy when Mom questioned her about it. Then, in the middle of the night, she started moving all the furniture around, making loud noises that kept our parents from falling asleep. When she began to interfere with Dad's new medicine schedule, the true risk became evident. He would miss doses or take them at the wrong times because she would alter the time on every clock in the house. She pretended to be innocent when apprehended, saying she was only trying to help organize things better. Any change to his pharmaceutical regimen could result in another cardiac episode, the physicians had cautioned. While officially remaining within the law, Olivia came up with inventive methods to ruin our parents' lives, so I promptly filed for an emergency restraining order. At night, she would stand quietly in their bedroom doorway and watch them attempt to go asleep, or she would play music that was precisely 1 decibel below the noise regulation limit. When Dad found out that the brake lines on his automobile had been tampered with, it was the tipping point. The mechanic verified that the damage was deliberate, but we were unable to identify Olivia. She accidentally ignited a minor fire in the kitchen at 3 a.m., that same day while cooking. My dad called me crying. "We can no longer live this way, Madison. My blood pressure is skyrocketing, and your mother hasn't slept in days. However, she is our daughter. How could we have let her down so severely?" I made arrangements for Olivia to be evaluated by a mental evaluation team using my legal connections. Instead of cooperating, she launched into a thorough conspiracy theory about how I had planned everything, including the hotel mishaps and Dad's heart attack, to turn our parents against her. The initial assessment from the evaluation team was unsettling. They observed a total lack of empathy and extreme narcissistic characteristics, pointing to a pattern of behavior that had probably been growing for years. Olivia would either deny everything or defend it as essential for protecting her family, from my influence when I showed her the evidence of her behavior. The process has been a nightmare, but our parents have finally consented to formally evict her. She has been methodically wrecking the house by punching holes in the walls, ruining appliances, and shredding documents. She asserts that the house would never feel the same without her and says she is marking her territory. Things took a far darker turn last night. During one of her subsequent 3 a.m., eventually, she wrote resignation letters to the principal of his school and gained access to Dad's email account. Claiming to be helping them simplify their lives, she then went on to cancel all of their utility and credit card bills. The police are called in once more, but Olivia seemed to enjoy operating just outside the law. It is difficult to make a case for her quick removal since she is aware of the limits of her influence before going beyond established legal bounds. I've been painstakingly recording everything in an effort to compile a case that should lead to both required mental health treatment and criminal prosecution. My years of experience as a paralegal are coming in very handy. Every event, text message, and item of property damage is being recorded and validated. Since they are unable to go back to their own house, our parents are currently lodging at a motel. Mom's voice was hollow when she called me yesterday. We never realized we needed to protect the world from her because we spent so many years protecting her from the world. Next week is the date of the eviction hearing in court. Although Olivia is unaware of it yet, I have gathered proof of financial fraud she has perpetrated over the previous few years using our parents' information. I've been planning for years because sometimes the best defense is a well-prepared offense. Third update. Nobody could have predicted how dramatically the final meeting with Olivia would unfold. She went from using psychological warfare to open criminal action after being served with the official eviction notice. She planned what I can only characterize as a deliberate attempt to demolish everything our family had worked so hard to create 3 days prior, on what would be her last night at our parents' house. She gained access to Dad's retirement funds and tried to move the whole amount to an offshore account she had covertly opened. Fortunately, it was discovered in time by the bank's fraud detection system. After that failed, she started methodically destroying priceless family relics, including Dad's collection of first edition books from his teaching career, our great-grandmother's wedding china, and photo albums from the 1940s. All of them were purposefully destroyed. She even claimed to be cleaning the house of generational trauma, while live-streaming portions of her outburst on social media. When she found out about the covert camera system I had lawfully built with our parents' consent to record her activities, the issue reached a breaking point. She reacted violently and instantly. Screaming that she would sooner burn the house down than allow them to win, she snatched up a kitchen knife and began slicing furniture. I was asked to disclose the extensive evidence file I had put together by the police negotiator. It included years' worth of documented incidents, including surveillance footage from the house demonstrating her deliberate destruction of property, financial documents demonstrating systematic theft from our parents' accounts, and medical records demonstrating her meddling in Dad's medical care. Olivia was finally arrested following a 4-hour standoff. The police's discovery that she had been using several false identities during her booking, however, was the true shock. She has reportedly been using similar strategies to con other families, posing as a distant cousin in need of assistance or a long-lost relative. Currently, the district attorney is pursuing several felonies, including identity theft, criminal threats, criminal destruction of property, and attempted financial fraud. The foundation of their argument is now the evidence I have accumulated over the years. Last thoughts. While they deal with everything, our parents are living with me in San Francisco. Just the 3 of us had our first genuine family meal in years yesterday. I keep thinking about all the signs we ignored, all the times Madison tried to tell us, Mom sobbed during dessert. We were so caught up in the idea of not losing her that we never realized we were losing ourselves, said Dad, who has now begun to recover his health now that he is no longer influenced by Olivia. During the police search, the vintage pocket watch that Olivia had stolen years prior was discovered among her belongings. I'm reminded that all realities come to light in due time as I hold it and listen to its steady tick. My dad handed it to me last night and said, "It should have been yours all along." Going forward, we're concentrating on family healing, the genuine sort, based on openness and respect for one another rather than coercion and terror. The person who ought to have been closest to you is sometimes the most difficult to eliminate out of your life. However, we've discovered that a smaller, healthier family is preferable to a larger, toxic one. I appreciate all of your help and guidance during this trip. When things got hard, your remarks kept me going. We are especially grateful to the community's legal experts who provided advice. You are truly remarkable. My parents publicly humiliated me at my golden sister's party. I cut ties, rebuilt myself, and exposed the truth about their toxic legacy. My sister, Maya, 47F, has always cast a shadow over me, 42F. We were brought up in a wealthy Boston suburb by parents, both in their late 70s, who were very focused on success and social standing. Even though we were both intellectually gifted, Maya was always presented as our family's jewel while I was only an afterthought. This dynamic was evident from my very first recollections. Our parents would have lavish celebrations for Maya's birthdays, inviting the kids from the wealthiest families in their neighborhood. In contrast, my birthdays were frequently overlooked or commemorated with a hurried card explaining that we already spent too much on Maya's party this year. This trend persisted throughout our schooling. Our parents hosted an all-night celebration when Maya was accepted to a prestigious private high school. They simply remarked, "At least we won't have to pay for this one," when I was awarded a merit scholarship to an equally renowned institution 2 years later. Every accomplishment I made was compared to Maya's and found wanting. The difference was much more noticeable while we were in college. Our parents covered all of Maya's living expenses and tuition at Yale Law School, as well as a nice apartment. Regarding my schooling, they advised me to take out loans or pursue a less costly job route because they had already committed their resources to Maya's law school fund. In spite of this, I obtained scholarships, worked several jobs, and earned an honors degree in computer science. When we started our careers, Maya took the route our parents had carefully mapped out for her, joining a prominent legal practice and moving up the corporate ladder as predicted. In the computer sector, I forged my own route by relying more on talent and perseverance than on family ties to launch my career. Family get-togethers were usually fraught with tension. Maya was referred to as our successful daughter by our parents, who would treat me as though I didn't exist. Our mother would hastily shift the topic or make disparaging remarks such, "Oh, she does something with computers," when family members inquired about my line of work. I was able to establish a decent job in spite of the ongoing, subtle, but persistent emotional assault. I managed a team of engineers and had a comfortable 6-figure salary as a middle management at a burgeoning software business by the time I was in my early 40s. However, this was nothing compared to Maya's accomplishments as a lawyer in our parents' eyes. It all came to a climax during Maya's promotion party 3 years ago. Our parents kept reminding everyone that she was the youngest person ever to be appointed a senior partner at her firm. More than 200 members of Boston's affluent social circles were invited to the grand ballroom of the Fairmont Copley Plaza, which they had rented out. The intricate floral arrangements, the champagne towers, and the string quartet playing in the corner are just a few of the agonizing details I can still clearly recall from that night. In order to celebrate the accomplishment of their golden kid, our parents had gone all out. I felt like an alien at what should have been a family gathering, so I sat at my designated table, a little away from the main family table, and tried to act dignified. I anticipated the customary kudos for Maya when our father got up to speak, but what transpired was more than I could have ever dreamed. He opened by referring to Maya as their greatest blessing while addressing the full assembly of Boston's social and legal elite. I had long recognized that she was their golden child, so that part wasn't shocking. The room burst in amusement as he went on to joke that they should have stopped having children after Maya since the second ones are usually useless anyway. He said that they could have spent all of their time and money on Maya rather than wasting them on me. My mother said, "At least we had one child we could be proud of," as she stood next to him, grinning and nodding. Their words weren't even the worst part. It was observing the reactions of those in my immediate vicinity, who seemed to find my public humiliation amusing. I frantically glanced at Maya in the hopes that she would speak up or else demonstrate her sisterly support. However, she merely shot me a pitying look before joining in the uncomfortable giggles. "They're just joking," Maya remarked simply when I questioned her later in the hotel's powder room. "Perhaps they would be proud of you too if you put in as much effort as I did." Those remarks, given with such casual harshness, were the last straw. My relationship with my family ended that evening. I had put up with being the inferior daughter for years, but this public admission of my inadequacy was too much. I immediately removed them from all of my social media accounts, blocked their phone numbers, and erased their email addresses as soon as I came home. I got a job at another software business across town in less than a week, and I immediately started a new life. I gave my job and personal development all of my attention for the ensuing 3 years. I developed a solid team, received numerous promotions, and even began coaching more junior female IT workers. For the first time in my life, I felt genuinely valued for my abilities, and my new coworkers recognized my leadership style and skill set. My parents were worried about my absence from family events, I was told by distant relatives, but their worry was never followed by an apology. Telling everyone that I was being oversensitive and dramatic, Maya seemed to defend their actions. She even implied that my emotional instability was evidence that our parents had been correct about me all along. Life continued, and my independence brought me serenity. I traveled widely, purchased a stunning brownstone in Back Bay, and formed sincere friendships with individuals who valued me for who I am. I found a sense of self-worth that was unrelated to comparisons to my sister, and the burden of continuously attempting to earn my parents' love subsided. My parents sent me several urgent texts yesterday after I hadn't heard from them in 3 years. The first few arrived via email, followed by voicemails on my work phone and, lastly, text messages from unfamiliar numbers. I felt something bad must have happened because they hadn't made an attempt to get in touch with me in months. I called them back after unblocking their number against my better judgment, my pulse pounding as I braced myself for any news they could have. Must I tell them what they told me? Their predicament is almost poetically ironic, and I'm thinking of a plan of action that might eventually let them see the repercussions of their actions. However, I want to be sure that my judgment isn't influenced by past traumas. I've been thinking about how life can take such unexpected turns while sitting in my home office for the past few hours and gazing out my window at the Boston skyline. For me, the last 3 years have been life-changing. My team now looks up to me instead of me being the constant letdown. I played a key role in helping us land a significant deal that recently made our business famous. In retrospect, I see how much their unrelenting criticism impacted every facet of my existence. I hopped from relationship to relationship in my 20s and 30s, constantly selecting individuals who would treat me the same way my parents did, as though I was never quite good enough. To comprehend the pattern and overcome it, years of therapy were required. Their disdain for my accomplishments even affected my job decisions. Whenever I was successful, I would minimize my achievements, almost as an act of contrition. I didn't even inform them when I got my first big promotion because I knew they would somehow compare it to Maya's career. Ironically, they never realized how strong it was to launch a profession without their help since they were too preoccupied with upholding their flawless image and Maya's flawless reputation. Every accomplishment I made was the result of my own perseverance and diligence. Maya provided financial support and connections, but I was left to fend for myself in the corporate world. I can't help but think about how my parents' fixation with social standing and perfection has finally come back to haunt them as I get ready to disclose what they told me. After all, the cosmos appears to have a sense of humor. I'm also struggling with the fact that, in spite of everything they've done, including years of emotional abuse and humiliation in front of others, a tiny part of me still cares about my family's well-being. Perhaps that makes me human, or perhaps it makes me weak. In any case, I am certain that the choice I make next will permanently alter everyone's life. Shall I share their words with you? What do I intend to do? I am aware that some people could argue that I should be the larger person and take the high road. But perhaps it's time for them to comprehend what it's like to lose everything they hold dear, including their reputation, social status, and ideal family image, after decades of being destroyed in that embarrassing speech 3 years ago. My office is now covered with deep shadows as the sun sets over the Charles River. I'm getting more and more frantic as my phone continues to beep with additional messages from my folks. My silence is probably making them nuts because they have never had to wait for anything in their lives. Excellent, I believe I'm prepared to discuss what they told me and my next steps. To be clear, though, this isn't about retaliation. It's time to hold them accountable for years of emotional abuse. This is about justice. Justice is at stake here, and they must be held responsible for years of emotional torture. Showing them that their useless second daughter is more powerful than they ever thought is the goal here. If you would want to hear the rest of this story, please let me know. It will be worth the wait, I assure you. First update. I spent the next few hours assembling the startling facts of Maya's predicament following that initial phone conversation with my parents. Not only was what they disclosed shocking, but it also completely destroyed the flawless image they had worked so hard to create over the years. My parents claim that Maya has been battling a serious cocaine addiction. 3 months ago, she lost her job at the law firm, but she was able to keep it a secret from our parents by acting as though she was still employed. Only after one of their country club friends noticed Maya in a troubling state outside a well-known drug house in a dilapidated area of Boston did they learn the truth. What is the most ironic aspect of this whole circumstance? It seems that Maya began using cocaine in order to continue performing well at work. In order to keep up with the rigorous schedule and high-pressure atmosphere, she sought chemical aid due to the burden of being the youngest senior partner and our parents' unending expectations. I could hear the shame seeping out of my mother's voice as she tearfully described how Maya had spent all of her money and their retirement fund to fuel her habit. What really surprised me, though, was that their reputation, rather than Maya's health or recuperation, remained their top priority. As if someone would overhear our phone talk, my mother muttered, "We can't let anyone at the club know about this. What would people think? We've already had to justify her absence from recent social gatherings." The portion that made my blood boil then came. As is his custom, my father looked for someone else to blame for his golden child's decline. "Back then, you didn't expose her to drugs, did you?" His voice was full of accusations as he asked. "You were always the one who rebelled." I became silent in shock. They were attempting to blame me for this despite the fact that I hadn't spoken to them or Maya in 3 years. They didn't seem to care that I've never even done drugs. They believe that their useless daughter is somehow to blame for any issues with their ideal daughter. My mother promptly added their true motive for phoning. She begged, "Please come home and help us take care of her. People would find out if we sent her to rehab, so we can't. You might be able to take a few weeks off from work. After all, your work isn't nearly as significant as Maya's former work." It was verified that nothing had changed by that final remark, which was so nonchalantly harsh. They couldn't resist making fun of me, even in this circumstance. However, they later disclosed something that further fanned the ridiculousness of their request. Maya's former coworkers had already made 2 attempts at intervention, including offering to covertly set up private therapy at a covert facility in Switzerland. My dad clarified, "We can't risk anyone finding out. The reputation of our family would be ruined if it were known that Maya had entered a rehab facility. We would like to deal with this internally." With me serving as her full-time caregiver, their plan, if you can call it that, was to keep Maya confined to her old room at their home. Through sheer resolve and familial duty, they appeared to believe that their useless daughter might somehow overcome their perfect one's drug addiction. I'm still in shock over their foolishness. I find it ironic that after years of ignoring and disparaging me, they are now seeking for my assistance. Even more startling, though, is their readiness to jeopardize Maya's health, and maybe her life, in order to protect their reputation. We would like to deal with this internally. They had a plan, if you can call it that, to keep Maya confined to her old room at their house while I took care of her full-time. Through sheer resolve and familial responsibility, they appeared to believe that their useless daughter might somehow heal their perfect one's drug addiction. My mother genuinely sneered at my suggestion that addiction calls for expert medical help. "Stop being dramatic," she advised. "You've never been as strong as Maya. She will recover if her family provides her with some help. She is unique, she is not like other addicts." This was the direction of the conversation for nearly 2 hours. They took turns pointing the finger at me, downplaying how bad Maya's addiction was, and worrying about how to hide it from their friends. They never once showed sincere concern for Maya's welfare or admitted that their pressure may have contributed to her demise. My father made one last remark before hanging up the phone, which solidified my choice of what to do next. "Keep in mind that if you don't assist us with this, you're proving all we've ever said about you being of no use to this family," he continued. Without answering, I hung up, already making plans in my head. They wish to remain silent about this. Their reputation is a concern for them. Perhaps it's time for Boston's elite to meet the family they've long admired in person. I can't help but see the irony as I sit here figuring out what to do next. They need the daughter they cast aside to preserve the one they revere after spending years pulling me down to elevate Maya. However, I have another idea that will ultimately help them see the real consequences of their behavior. Shall I tell you my plan? Taking the high road isn't exactly what most people would think of doing, but perhaps it's not the best course of action this time around given everything they've done. Watch this space to see what happens next. I can assure you that karma will soon make a stunning entrance in their meticulously planned life. Second update. I debated for a long time before deciding to contact Maya directly. Without our parents interfering, I wanted to hear her side of the tale. What transpired was painful and eye-opening. On the phone, Maya's voice was hardly recognizable, weak, uncertain, and entirely different from the self-assured sister I recalled. She initially spoke in short, disjointed words, as though it took a great deal of work to put her ideas together. The entire story then slowly came to light. She didn't fall into addiction all at once. It began soon after I was humiliated by our parents at the promotion party. The weight of our parents' expectations and the burden of being the youngest senior partner became too much to bear. She admitted, "I was frantically trying to prove I deserved the position by working 90-hour weeks. I had trouble falling asleep. Every case seemed like it might be the one in which I failed, where I would demonstrate my lack of competence." Seeing how worn out she was, one of the other partners gave her something to keep her advantage. Cocaine was the something in question. What began as a one-time boost to get through challenging instances turned into a daily requirement. Maya explained how she would plan her entire day to keep up the ideal facade while controlling her increasing dependence. She would plan court dates for the mornings when she was most lucid, attend lunch meetings that were really occasions to use, and progressively distance herself from everyone who may observe her decline. The most startling admission, however, came when Maya sobbed and admitted that it was also a turning point in her life to witness our parents make fun of me at her celebration. She wailed, "I saw myself becoming them. I was so focused on maintaining this image of perfection that I stood there and let them destroy you. I've carried that guilt ever since." She disclosed how the unrelenting adulation from our parents had turned into a prison. The bar was increased with each success. The pressure to be flawless increased with each achievement. "They didn't just ruin your life," she said in a whisper. "They ruined mine, too, just in a different way." The topic of discussion turned to her present circumstances. Her savings, her career, and her standing in the legal community are all gone. Our parents' resistance to allow her to get professional help, however, is what scares her the most. She said, "They keep saying they can handle it privately. But I know I need real treatment. I'm scared I'll die if I don't get help soon." Then Maya did something that surprised me. She expressed regret, not just a shallow "I'm sorry," but a sincere admission of her responsibility for my suffering. She apologized for all the times she had taken sides with our parents, for all the times she had reveled in their admiration while they had denigrated me. In her own words, "You were always the stronger one. You built your life despite them, while I built mine to please them. Look where that got me." Neither of us missed the irony in her comment. Maya shared more details about our parents' present conduct while we spoke. More focused on maintaining appearances than obtaining her assistance, they have been micromanaging her deterioration. "They've created elaborate lies to explain my absence from social events," Maya stated. "They've even staged fake video calls where I pretend to be working late at the office I no longer have access to." Finding out how they have been responding to her withdrawal attempts was the most upsetting aspect. They have seen it as a minor nuisance rather than seeking medical care. "When I experience severe symptoms, they give me sleeping pills and lock me in my old bedroom," she stated. "They tell the housekeeping staff I have a bad flu. I overheard them discussing what to tell the country club members," Maya remarked, laughing bitterly. "They were more worried about maintaining their standing in the club than whether I might need emergency medical care." I had a clear image of Maya's addiction and the poisonous familial dynamic that fueled it by the end of our talk. Our parents hadn't produced one successful and one unsuccessful daughter. Though in separate ways, they had harmed us both. I want to get proper help, finally, Maya said. But I'm terrified of standing up to them. They've controlled every aspect of my life for so long. I don't know how to defy them. I understood exactly what I had to do at that point. I had to change my original revenge plot. Indeed, our parents should be held accountable for their deeds. However, I also have to make sure Maya receives the much-needed assistance. I'm developing a new plan that will safeguard Maya's road to healing while also exposing our parents' destructive behavior. Now is the moment to demonstrate to them that their useless daughter is capable of handling any problem, even if it means destroying their valuable social standing in the process. I will describe my plan and how I plan to implement it in the upcoming update. Let's assume that our parents are going to realize that keeping up appearances shouldn't be their top priority at this time. Third update. My strategy was executed with precision and method, focusing on our parents' most prized possession, their position in Boston's affluent circles. With the church community, Phase 1 got underway. I secretly forwarded documents to the Senior Leadership Council of their Episcopal Church, including proof of Maya's current state and a thorough letter detailing how our parents were deliberately delaying their daughter from obtaining life-saving medical care. I emphasized how they put appearances before their daughter's life by mentioning their refusal of the offer of the Swiss Rehabilitation Center. It happened just before the annual meeting of the church fundraising committee, which my mother had chaired for the previous 15 years. The council reacted quickly. In addition to removing her from the committee, they started a formal conversation regarding the Christian need to help family members in need. With several members of the church openly glancing at my parents' normal pew, which was noticeably empty, the Sunday sermon about pride coming before a fall was especially incisive. Phase 2 focused on their network of professional contacts. I methodically contacted important associates at Maya's previous legal practice, voicing my serious concerns regarding our parents' handling of the matter. The company immediately disassociated itself, already concerned about possible liabilities. Our parents' painstakingly constructed fiction about Maya continuing to work there was essentially destroyed when they released a formal statement stating that she had left months prior for personal reasons. The country club stage was especially fulfilling. All I had to do was make sure the appropriate individuals heard the appropriate conversations. Among the elite members of the club, gossip spread like wildfire. The absurdity of the situation was now being discussed in whispers by the same social circles that had laughed at my humiliation 3 years prior. My mother's valuable junior league connections provided the brilliant idea. The message was clear. Their place in Boston's social hierarchy was eroding. I made arrangements for their annual charity banquet, which was typically held at our parents' house, to be moved because of concerns about the home environment. I put the second phase of my plan into action as their meticulously planned social environment collapsed. I was able to get Maya a spot at a prestigious rehabilitation center in Arizona, away from Boston's prying eyes, by working with her old coworkers. It gave her the opportunity to heal free from the poisonous influence of our parents. The administrative director of the facility consented to list Maya under a false identity after learning about our parents' meddling in earlier attempts at rehabilitation. This made sure our parents couldn't interfere with or control her therapy. Maya's path to recovery, from addiction and from our parents' oppressive expectations, began when she wrote me a quick note upon arriving at the facility. "Thank you for being strong enough to do what I couldn't." As I had expected, our parents' response to their social collapse was just that. They kept calling me, alternating between angry calls and frantic pleas. Father's last voicemail was quite instructive. "How dare you destroy everything we built? We gave you life, and this is how you repay us." I sent a single text message in response. "Consider this my repayment for your years of apt parenting. Your reputation is experiencing the same thing you did to my self-worth, systematic destruction. How does it feel to be seen as useless in your social circle?" Boston's affluent social circles are still feeling the effects. Our parents, who were once honored guests at all important social gatherings, are now discreetly denied invitations to important events. They get no response to their calls. They mysteriously lose their regular reservations for dinner at upscale eateries. Their new reality is the sidelong glances and whispers they have been trying so hard to escape. Maya's therapist at the rehab facility sent me an unexpected email last week. She revealed, with Maya's consent, that my sister is progressing remarkably. Now that she is finally getting professional assistance and is free from our parents' toxic expectations, she is starting to realize how their fixation on perfection fueled her addiction. In addition, the therapist made a comment that made me cry. It seems that Maya has a picture of us as kids on her bedside table. It was taken before our connection was ruined by our parents' expectations. She hopes to restore the sisterly connection we previously shared by looking at it every morning as inspiration for her recuperation. Unable to handle their embarrassment in Boston, our parents are said to have escaped to their Berkshire's vacation home. Things became worse after their last attempt at damage control, which involved sending a long email to their social circle saying they were misinterpreted. They were officially suspended from the country club after someone, not me, for once, leaked it to all of the members. One of my mother's oldest friends, who saw me humiliated at Maya's promotion celebration, wrote me a letter yesterday. She realized how the community had tolerated our parents' destructive behavior for years and expressed her sincere regret for not speaking out that evening. Letting someone face the consequences of their actions is sometimes the most loving thing we can do, she wrote at the end of her letter, a quotation that encapsulated the situation well. Some may argue that my retaliation was excessively severe and that I ought to have approached the matter more tactfully. However, I disagree. Our parents' reputation was cultivated over decades of violence and emotional abuse. They maintained control and imposed their perverted ideal of perfection by using their social position as a weapon. They are now going through the agonizing reality of being viewed as a letdown by their peers, just as they did to me. Maya's recuperation is still going well. She's beginning to envision a future free from the controlling influence of our parents, one in which she defines success according to her own standards rather than using their distorted definition. Together, we are gradually mending the harm our parents caused to our relationship. For my part, I've at last discovered tranquility. It turned out that the useless daughter was the one who could bring about both justice and salvation. I've demonstrated that the ability to stand up for what's right, even at great personal expense, is a better indicator of success than social standing or parental favor. At all costs, our parents sought to keep up appearances. They got what they wanted then. Everyone now recognizes them for who they truly are. I evicted my sister-in-law after she left biohazards in my home, leading to family conflicts. Now my husband is stuck outside with her. My spouse has a sister and 2 brothers. I'm not really fond of his sister and her spouse. After losing their house, they have recently been couch surfing. This may have been prevented had they behaved sensibly. They initially remained with my in-laws, but they were asked to leave because of their unruly kids, citing my father-in-law's diabetes. After their elder children moved out, they then moved in with my husband's older brother and his wife, who had 2 extra rooms. However, they were forced to leave after 3 weeks due to planned renovations. They helped out around the house and generally kept things clean, so the older brother and his wife were pleased with them. The younger brother then moved in with them. The sister-in-law, SIL, assisted and managed her kids while they were there. Since her mother was coming to help with the baby, the youngest brother's wife, who was quite proud of her home and had just given birth, let them remain for a while. Finally, my husband agreed to take them in after being emotionally coerced. I only agreed if they kept the house tidy, especially because they had previously been untidy in my house. For instance, they would throw trash next to the trash can but not inside, frequently leaving behind dried and odorous food remnants. Even worse, instead of putting her old sanitary towels into the bathroom bin, SIL would frequently leave them on top of it. I asked the youngest brother's wife about their neatness before they moved in. According to her, everything was maintained tidy and orderly, so they had no complaints. But during family get-togethers over the holidays, I had personally witnessed how they behaved differently in other households than mine. I made my youngest brother and my parents-in-law witnesses to their pledge to help out around the house and to keep it as tidy as they found it in order to maintain accountability. They would have to depart right away if they disobeyed these regulations. SIL consented but retorted mockingly, "As you wish, Your Highness." It was all right for the first 5 days. Then, this morning, I discovered a used, incorrectly wrapped sanitary towel on top of the trash can. Her daughter, who was staying in my daughter's room, placed a used tampon on the sink and smashed the shampoo and conditioner in the bathroom. Additionally, because SIL's husband had left for work early, the kitchen was in disarray. I couldn't risk my inquisitive toddler picking up a bloody sanitary towel. I knocked on the door of the guest room and instructed her to gather her belongings and go. With an indignant expression, she asserted her innocence and said, I could throw it away if it bothered me, it was just some blood. The final straw was that. After grabbing her luggage, I began packing her things. She refused to leave the house at first, claiming that she didn't follow my instructions and that she was going to wait for her brother. I informed her that I also owned this house. A few hours ago, I dropped her off at my in-laws with her youngest children. Her husband made a scene when I wouldn't let him in after he returned from work. He visited my in-laws, but because of Phil's sickness, they don't want them there. Within 20 minutes after my husband got home from work, my in-laws and her family were in our driveway. They are still arguing about being allowed inside while standing outside. I warned my husband that he was not welcome in our house either if he backed down, and I wouldn't open the door. Second paragraph. First update. A little update. My driveway appeared to be the scene of a Mexican standoff yesterday. I declined to walk out and participate in the conversation while they were out there. 2 hours. 2 whole hours later, they were gone. They are at my in-laws right now, but they said they would come back tomorrow when everyone would be home from work to talk about the situation and come up with a practical answer. That's what my hubby told me, anyway. I informed my husband that I would not have them in my home as soon as he entered. Additionally, he cleaned up after them when I instructed him to. He asked me why I made him do it after he had cleaned up. I informed him that, in contrast to him, I was not biologically linked to other people and that I was equally repulsed by their bodily fluids. I went on to say that he could only imagine how awful I used to feel when I had to clean up after them if he thought it was dirty. He bleached the sink 3 times and said he would buy a new bin. We have a plan for tomorrow that states they will never move in with us. He left the task of cleaning up the shampoo and conditioner mess in the bathroom to his niece. Our daughter is welcome to use our shower in the meanwhile. Tomorrow, we'll see how this plays out. Third paragraph. Second update. It was a long day with my in-laws yesterday. We left early in order to finish it. A guilt trip was the first thing my in-laws did. They first said they would house them until they found a place, but it wouldn't be good for Phil's health because of his diabetes. In order for them to stay with them because they have extra bedrooms, I advised them to advise their daughter to discipline her kids so they wouldn't run around like monkeys. Sil wasn't pleased about that. She launched into a diatribe, accusing me of trying to sour relations between her and her brother and claiming that I had always envied her. I told her that since she didn't like her own life, it was unrealistic for me to be envious of hers. Since my husband never gets involved in my family's affairs, she wondered whether he would mind if I told him what to do with his family. She instructed him to establish the rule and let me know that his sister and her family would remain for however long it took them to relocate. That was unacceptable to my hubby. He informed her that it was a 2 yes, 1 no situation and that the house belonged to me equally to his. Even though I was now a stay-at-home wife, I still made contributions to the house's purchase when I was employed. His MIL was staying because of the baby, so the younger brother and his wife indicated they wouldn't be able to host them. Renovations were mentioned by the older ones. The wives of the older and younger brothers claimed that I was making this up, saying that she always kept their home and her own tidy. I was advised to accept it and behave like family. Since I saw what I saw and her brother witnessed it and had to clean it up, I informed them I wasn't there to debate about her cleanliness. He attested to the fact that he did and that I wasn't lying. After making a mistake, my sister-in-law asked her brother, "Why did you clean it up?" "Because I was supposed to clean it up," she said. Either she knows she has the entire family in her pocket, or she is the most stupid person alive to acknowledge that. In any event, I made it plain that she would not be staying with me and that, because she got along much better with the other members of the family, they would find a solution on their own. My niece refused to clean up the leftover mess when my husband told her that she was old enough to do so. "She's your niece but my daughter, don't you dare tell her what to do," her father chimed in, causing a heated argument that they both had to end. I explained to her and her husband that my husband and I were simply there to collect money for the trash can we had to discard because she was scattering biohazards all over the house. "It would never happen," she replied, laughing in my face. "All right," I said. It happened so fast that day that I still had her daughter's, her husband's, and her 2 younger children's tablets, along with some of her jewelry and a few other items. "I hope you understand that when I threw you out, I didn't pack all your possessions." I assured her that everything would be sold to cover my expenses. She was shouting loudly about what she would do to me if I dared to sell anything as we were leaving. Having my back, my hubby advised me to sell anything I needed to. They continued to text my husband later, pleading with him to do them a favor by putting up with her for a few months until she recovered. I informed him that I would never consent to allowing her, her slobby husband, and her swarm of kids to return. They also tried to guilt me about his niece's education by texting me, saying that if they find a rental outside of the school zone, she could have to start at another school because they don't have a place to remain near her school. "Tough luck," I responded back, then blocked them. Although my husband won't block his parents, he was upset with his brothers for accusing him of being self-centered for not taking them in when they were going through a difficult time. Although they acknowledged that it was disgusting, they justified her actions by speculating that I might have done something to make it worse. Finally, the wife of the oldest brother sent a voicemail to my husband's WhatsApp using her husband's phone. She said, "I'm not kidding. You're still fine to watch her 6-year-old on Tuesdays and Wednesdays as usual, aren't you?" I instructed him to determine the response to that inquiry. A new family was moving into the area, so I had to stay a little while longer after I went to pick up my kids. We held a brief meet and greet since the parents wanted to get to know the parents of their kids' classmates. Since I often pick up my husband's older brother's 6-year-old daughter on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, the office brought her to me. Since no one had been to pick her up, her instructor, assuming I was late because of the meeting with the new parents, instructed an office administrator to bring her to me when she saw me waiting in the hallway. I informed them that on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, I was no longer in charge of her. They must have contacted her mother when they brought her back to the office. My husband informed me when I got home from the meet and greet that his parents had called and expressed their disapproval of me leaving their grandchild. Additionally, they placed his older brother's wife on the phone, and she and my husband got into a heated argument. He spoke with the SIL I expelled as well. In the end, my husband informed his parents that they would not be allowed to speak to him for a week, and that he would only unblock them if they sincerely apologized to him and to me. After I made it apparent that I would no longer offer free services, he clarified that it was the parents' responsibility to arrange for pickup. For the time being, the SIL who I expelled is still living with her parents. My in-laws are hosting her spouse, 2 of her elder children, and her younger 2. The 2 younger ones and the other 2 older ones are dispersed throughout the other 2 homes. They did, however, imply that it would be a short-term arrangement because she had assured them that she would soon convince her brother to change his ways. I believe I have a long journey ahead of me. The wife of the oldest brother was present when I dropped off my kids at school on Friday. She trailed after me. She confronted me in the store parking lot when I paused to pick up some products. I refused to accept her sincere apologies and desire to make things right. She was desperate, claiming that since she is the lead and must oversee, she would lose the project if she missed one more week of overtime. She had to pick up her 6-year-old since her husband was unable to adjust his schedule. She argued that resenting her 6-year-old over a casual remark was not justified. Her child blamed me for the biohazards left in my house, so I told her that wasn't a casual remark. She stated that she hoped to diffuse the tension and that all she wanted was for everyone to get along. I suggested that she ask the SIL for assistance, but she said that the SIL had declined since she was barely able to manage her 3 children under the age of 7. In order to free up time and energy to pick up the kids, I advised her to ask the youngest wife, who has her mother residing with her. She claimed that rather than assisting with her 6-year-old, the youngest wife preferred to focus on the early recollections of her own child. I advised her to accept it and work with the people she regarded as family to find a solution. I then proceeded with my shopping. She was there once again when I went to pick up my child in the afternoon. She accompanied me home once we exited the pickup line. I parallel parked my driveway to keep her from parking there and bothering me at my door. In order to transfer the car, I texted my husband to ask him to let me know when he would be home. She parked on the side road and came to my house despite being unable to find a spot. I refused to open the door when she rang the ring. She went around the back and knocked on my back door, telling me that since we were family, I couldn't avoid her forever. Through the glass, I threatened to contact the police for harassment if she didn't leave. Then she went off. My mother-in-law and father-in-law were there when I went to answer our doorbell in the evening. I let them in because they wanted to apologize and come inside. The first thing they told us was how much the past 3 days had changed them. They then apologized and requested me to return to my regular self. According to my mother-in-law, because life is full of ups and downs, you may have to tolerate negativity from family members at times. It can't be all sunshine and roses all the time. They tried to guilt-trip me into helping out with the 6-year-old by pointing out that her mother and I had previously been on good terms, so my husband stopped his mother and said, "Then why do we, critical, back, slore, Lemon, and I, have to be the only ones on the receiving end of the negativity? When will you hold my sister and the others accountable for their behavior?" When she choose her side, I added, she forfeited that privilege. Given that she might lose her work, they wondered if I would be able to sleep at night. When my husband mentioned how much I had done for her without receiving payment, I said, yes. They retorted that it shouldn't matter if I had another child, who was already potty trained, because I was already at home. Since I had given up a lot for their kid over the years, I assured them that it did make a difference. I added that they had no right to force me to assist if they couldn't persuade the younger brother's wife to do so. When I would return the items I was holding hostage was what they wanted to know. My spouse interrupted, claiming that he was the one holding them captive and that they would be given back after his sister covered the costs. According to my FIL, SIL would be justified in informing the police about the theft. In response, my spouse said, "She can do as she pleases." My spouse then disclosed something that I was unaware of. He instructed them to inform his sister that he had canceled the hotel and all of the summer holiday plans, including his niece's horseback riding. He clarified that he didn't feel compelled to cover SIL's expenses if her father may ask him, "Who do you think you are to boss my daughter around?" My spouse made the decision to stop funding because their father was uncertain about the uncle-niece relationship and his authority to teach her responsibility. This disturbed my mother-in-law. He acknowledged that he had canceled it when she remarked, "You haven't done that, have you? I thought we would all have a great vacation." I refused to accept their attempts at justification, saying that SIL had a lot on her plate with the house loss and young children. I informed them that she had made bad decisions that led to her current predicament and that having a ninth kid would not make things better. According to my MIL, her body, her choices, means that every woman should make her own decisions regarding family planning, and I shouldn't tell SIL what she should or shouldn't do. She argued it was different, claiming she wasn't telling me to have more or fewer children since she liked grandchildren, the more, the better. I responded, "Like you're dictating to me right now, by weaseling your way into our home under the guise of an apology?" I said to her, "You can't expect me to look after other people's children either. The less stress I have, the merrier I am. That also falls under my body, my choice." We had decided to be less friendly over a little issue, so they turned to my husband and asked whether he was truly putting them through all of this. He replied, "Scrubbing down the 2 bathrooms after my niece and sister wasn't exactly the highlight of my life." We kindly requested them to leave since they were unable to stop apologizing and complaining about us not going with them for the family holiday and about canceling Sil's and her family's vacation, which they said destroyed the atmosphere for everyone. The doorbell kept ringing and there was frantic hammering on our door on Saturday early, waking us up. SIL and her oldest son were there. My spouse assured me that he would take care of it. She attempted to push through as he opened the door, but my husband stopped her. She was yelling and claiming to be able to knock some sense into me by coming inside. To put things in perspective, I am a year and a few months older than her, and she is little over 2 years older than my husband. She shoved $300 in his face and asked, "Is she happy now, that cradle-snatching expletive?" She continued to abuse me, calling me a jealous expletive and saying that I had ruined their family by controlling him. She went on to say that she expected him to promptly reschedule the vacation and activities now that she had given the money back. My spouse said that even if hell froze over, it wouldn't occur. While he went to get something, he instructed her to wait outside. He entered, put their things in a bag, and left out one of the tablets he had purchased and was still paying for with insurance. He gave her the bag after opening the door. She started swearing and urged him to mature. She threatened to file a report against him for causing damage to her possessions. He calmly retorted that everything was captured on camera and cautioned her against taking legal action because her children could hardly afford a lawyer, much less a place to live. He warned her not to set foot on our land ever again before slamming the door in her face. Without any further drama, she departed. My mother-in-law and father-in-law later called us and tried to talk sense into our heads. I had agreed with my husband to allow them to see our kids as long as they met certain requirements. Even though I'm not a lawyer, I informed them that their rights were restricted in our state when they claimed to have grandparent rights. They had to respect me and my family if they wanted to have a relationship with their grandchildren. We don't currently communicate with the other brothers, their spouses, SIL, or her immediate relatives. To convey a message, we momentarily unblock them before blocking them once more. We don't mind at all if the older brother's kids wish to get in touch with us or visit. The 6-year-old can only come here on weekends when we have time to host them, and only if her elder siblings are present to watch over her. There won't be any more surprise visits. We will also block their parents if they call us using those numbers. The wife of the older brother called me while I was messaging and offered to pay me $7.50 per hour for the days I watched her 6-year-old. She texted me to sweeten the bargain, offering to pay me for the previous 3 months, but I said, "No, thank you, I'll pass on that wonderful opportunity." Still, I declined. My sister stole my spotlight, trapped her boyfriend to have the first grandchild, and now expects me to raise her baby because she can't cope. In order to take my attention and have the first kid, my sister tricked her partner into getting pregnant. Now that she can't handle being a mother, she wants me to raise the child. After 6 years of dating, my longtime partner, Dexter, 29 million, and I, 28 million, were married last year. We met at a college function through common acquaintances. I was seeking a degree in business administration, and Dexter was studying engineering. Since the moment we clicked, we have been inseparable. To put things in perspective, I've always been competitive with my younger sister, Arya, 24F. She has attempted to do anything I did first or better since she was a young toddler. 3-year-old Arya hurled fits until our parents enrolled her in ballet courses when I was 7 years old. Even though she had never been interested in sports, She suddenly became interested in basketball when I joined the school team in the 8th grade. She insisted on taking lessons and putting in extra practice time when I started playing the piano at the age of 15 in order to surpass me at the yearly recital. Throughout high school and college, this trend persisted. Arya studied tirelessly till she received straight A's plus additional credit, while I received straight A's in my sophomore year. Arya put in endless effort to gain admission to an Ivy League university with a better scholarship after I got accepted to State University on a partial scholarship. Our parents supported her actions, viewing Arya as their ideal kid while frequently ignoring my accomplishments. While I had to work part-time jobs to help pay for my tuition, they spent thousands on her Ivy League education. After learning about my relationship with Dexter on social media, Arya began dating his younger brother Kenneth, 26 million, a few months later. Their connection appeared forced, and Kenneth was in his senior year of high school. But the fact that the girls were seeing brothers was cute in the eyes of our parents. Dexter and I developed a close bond throughout the years, helping one another through our early adult challenges, first jobs, and college. Our parents disapproved of our moving in together after graduation, calling it living in sin, yet they praised Arya's decision to live with Kenneth immediately after high school graduation as romantic. My grandparents were ecstatic when Dexter and I announced our engagement last year, anticipating the arrival of their first great-grandchild. In addition, my grandma gave me her antique cradle, saying she hoped to fill it soon. Arya was upset about this and couldn't bear that I was getting attention for once. She tried to overshadow us multiple times as we were organizing our wedding. Kenneth wasn't prepared, but she persuaded him to pop the question. We vehemently objected to her suggestion of a double wedding. She even attempted to attend our wedding wearing white, but our grandmother objected. Arya revealed her pregnancy at a family Sunday dinner 2 months after our wedding. During the news, Kenneth appeared startled and uneasy, nearly dropping his fork as she spoke. Arya purposefully became pregnant without telling Kenneth, as we later learned from mutual friends. In order to have the first grandchild in the family, she had stopped taking birth control without telling him. My parents were thrilled to have grandchildren. They focused all of their attention on Arya's pregnancy and totally forgot about our recent wedding. Every family get-together turned into a discussion about her nursery or baby shower ideas. While my father began establishing a college fund for the child, my mother spent hours shopping for baby clothes. After being given to me, my grandmother's antique cradle was abruptly moved to Arya's apartment since she needed it more. During a brother's night out, Kenneth told Dexter that he wasn't prepared to become a father. He wanted to concentrate on his recently launched IT profession first. He didn't know how to communicate his feelings of being confined and exploited without coming across like a villain. By claiming that their child required both parents, Arya persuaded him to stay. She even said that they needed to start living as a family and moved in with him at his parents' house. After the baby was born, the real issues began. Arya soon came to the conclusion that having a child was about more than just attracting attention and posting adorable pictures to social media. Even the most basic things, like changing diapers or getting up for night feeds, were difficult for her. Despite his best efforts, Kenneth was similarly unprepared. Both of them began to exhibit symptoms of overwhelm. Kenneth began staying late at work to avoid going home, and Arya would phone her mother at 3 a.m. to vent about how difficult things was. My folks invited Dexter and me to supper last week. We were mistaken to believe that it was simply a typical family supper. The fact that they had also invited Dexter's parents ought to have raised our first suspicion. My mother began discussing how anxious Arya was with the baby as soon as we sat down. She talked on how the kid was making things hard for her and how Arya needed time to figure out her life and job. She discussed how Arya needed a vacation and how her mental health was deteriorating. The unexpected thing came next. My parents said that since Dexter and I were stable, grown up, and had been married for a longer period of time, we need to adopt the child and raise it as our own. According to them, Arya could concentrate on her life and we wouldn't have to strive for our own child. I couldn't speak. Just because the real parents weren't prepared for the responsibilities they had consciously accepted, they were expecting us to look after someone else's child. We are currently under pressure from both of our families to change our minds. They constantly accuse us of being heartless for not assisting Arya when she is in need, but Dexter and I won't allow them to coerce us into accepting a duty that isn't ours. We never asked Arya to become pregnant, and we never asked her to utilize her pregnancy as a means of gaining attention. We're talking about a human being, not a car. Parenting proved to be more difficult than you anticipated, therefore you can't simply hand off your child. First update. Since my last post, things have become worse. My mother and Arya arrived at my place of employment yesterday during lunch. Somehow, the marketing company where I work in the city discovered my lunch routine. As I was making my way to my car to get lunch, they cornered me in the parking lot and made me listen to their suggestion. I could tell right away as they came up to me that this was no ordinary visit. Arya had black bags under her eyes and appeared to have not slept for days. She broke down in tears as she explained that she and Kenneth needed more time to work things out and that they weren't prepared for parenting. She insisted that parenthood was more difficult than she had anticipated and that she felt overwhelmed and confined. Then my mom told me about their new strategy. They proposed a 6-month trial period for Dexter and me to take the baby. They would come up with another plan if things didn't work out. They said this would ensure the infant was well cared for and give Arya and Kenneth time to organize their lives. In the parking lot, they even took a temporary custody agreement they had written out of their pocketbook. Arya went into a frenzy when I declined once again. She cried out that I was destroying her life and that I would help her if I truly loved her. She said that I was being bitter and self-centered by refusing to merely punish her. As she created the scenario, several of my coworkers, who were also on their lunch break, paused to gaze. My mom tried something different. She mentioned that I had always desired children and that perhaps this was God's will, that I should raise Arya's child rather than mine. This might be our chance to become parents, she remarked, adding that blessings might occasionally come in unexpected ways. Her statement made me furious for its arrogance. Prior to calling security, I instructed them both to depart. They arrived at our house with Kenneth's parents at approximately 7 p.m. that evening. It's clear that they organized this ambush in the hopes of applying pressure on us if they banded together. Fortunately, Dexter was at home. He adamantly urged them to go when they resumed their emotional manipulation. They said they wouldn't go unless we complied with their demands. As though he had nothing to do with the predicament, Kenneth's mother began to weep at how her son's life was being destroyed. My mother added that Arya needed help since she was experiencing postpartum depression. They utterly ignored the availability of real medical and psychiatric assistance, making it seem as though taking their child was the only way to assist her. Arya then revealed the shocking information. She had already purchased tickets to Europe with Kenneth. Regardless of our consent, they intended to leave the baby with us. She reasoned that we would be forced to care for the infant if they simply abandoned it. We had no choice but to step up because she had an entire plan in place. They would drop the kid off for babysitting and then head off for their trip. Her selfishness astounded me, and I told her right away that I would contact CPS if she left her child behind. I told them that it was illegal to abandon a child and that if they carried out their plan, I would not think twice about reporting them. They all felt shaken by this menace. My mother began pleading with us not to call the police, claiming that doing so would destroy Arya's life and future employment opportunities. Kenneth's parents came in, saying that if we agreed, they would raise Dexter's inheritance. They even offered to purchase us a new car and a larger house if we took the baby, but we refused. We threatened to call the police for trespassing if they didn't leave. They couldn't believe we wouldn't fall for their tricks, and their shocked expressions when they realized we were serious were almost humorous. Arya made one final attempt to guilt-trip me before she left. She reminded me of all the times I had expressed my desire to become a mother, how I had always cherished kids, and how this might be my only opportunity to become a mother. She also implied that I didn't truly want to be a mother because I had refused. I informed her that my desire to become a mother did not entail condoning her reckless actions. I told her that she was the one who made the decision to become pregnant without giving it much thought, and that she now had to face the repercussions of her choice. My mother cautioned us that we would come to regret our choice before they eventually went. She accused us of choosing to be unkind instead, saying that family should support family. In his will, Kenneth's father made it a point to reiterate that this would have an impact on our status. Dexter and I sat down and talked for a while after they departed. We came to the conclusion that we had to take action to guard against ambushes in the future. We're considering installing security cameras in our house, and I've alerted the security at work to any possible undesirable guests. The entire affair has demonstrated to us the extent to which our family would go in order to impose their desires on us. They obviously don't respect our personal space or our freedom to choose. If they persist in their harassment, we may pursue legal action. Second update. I made the decision to speak with my grandfather following the ambush at our house and the parking lot incident. He has always been our family's sane voice, and I needed his viewpoint. Since my grandmother's bridge club normally meets on Wednesday afternoons, I waited until I was certain he would be by himself. I brought his favorite lemon cake from the local bakery when I paid him a visit at their home. He was reading the newspaper in his study when I got there, as he normally did after lunch. When he first saw me, he grinned, but as soon as he saw how upset I was, his face immediately became serious. I took a seat in the worn leather chair across from him, the same chair I had sat in as a kid when I came to see him after school. I told him everything right away, including Arya's willful pregnancy, her incapacity to cope with motherhood, and our parents' absurd insistence that we accept her child. I described the ambush at work and how they threatened to leave the baby with us in an attempt to coerce us into accepting it. I could see his face shift from worry to rage as I talked. He already knew some of the narrative, but not the complete truth, which surprised me. He had heard an entirely different story from my parents. They claimed that Arya was upset when Dexter and I abruptly changed our minds about adopting the baby after first offering to do so. Arya was shown as the victim of our brutality, and we were portrayed as the bad guys who refused to assist families in need. When grandfather learned the truth, he became enraged. He found it incomprehensible that my mother, his own daughter, would attempt to make her elder daughter raise her younger daughter's child. Arya's intention to leave the kid with us and flee to Europe particularly infuriated him. He muttered that this wasn't how he and grandmother had brought up their kids as he continued to shake his head. Even though my grandmother was at her bridge club, he contacted her right away. This demonstrated how seriously he took the matter, as he rarely interferes with her social activities. He made me repeat everything to her when she got home 20 minutes later. Both of them were clearly distressed by the time I finished telling my story. This had gone too far, they both agreed. Grandfather claimed to have seen my parents continuously favor Arya throughout the years, but he had thought they would change their ways. He now understood that this mess was the result of parental partiality, which allowed Arya to act carelessly while expecting me to tidy up after her. Grandfather then made a surprising offer. Among his many holdings was a lovely property in a peaceful area approximately an hour's drive from our own residence. The current occupants had recently left the residence, which had been rented out for years. He said we needed to get away from this toxic circumstance and offered to give it to us. I tried to say no at first. It felt impossible to grasp that the house was worth at least $500,000. However, grandfather persisted. He claimed that he had intended to leave it to me in his will anyhow and that granting it to us now would enable us to get out of this predicament. My grandma concurred with him. Creating physical distance is sometimes the only way to deal with toxic family dynamics, she said. When we were ready, the house would allow us to establish our own family without any influence from either set of parents, she added. The very next day, they had the documents prepared by their lawyer. Although we wouldn't want to, the house was transferred to our names with the stipulation that we couldn't sell it for at least 5 years. According to our grandfather, this requirement was put in place to stop our parents from attempting to coerce us into selling it and handing Arya the proceeds. Dexter was in disbelief when I informed him about my grandparents' offer when I came home that night. Although he and my grandparents had always been friendly, this degree of assistance was surprising. We spoke about the offer and its implications for us all night long. Longer commutes to work would result from moving an hour away, but the calm and distance seemed worth it. We chose to accept the kind offer from my grandparents. Before we could move in, the house needed a few small repairs, but grandfather offered to pay for those as well. He declared his desire for us to start over, away from the manipulation and drama we had been enduring. Third update. We moved into the house my grandfather gave us 3 months ago. Our sanity has been greatly preserved by the distance. We changed our phone numbers as soon as we moved, limiting the new ones to my grandparents and a select group of reliable pals. In case someone tried to show up without permission, we also established a full security system with cameras. Our home has turned into a haven. The first month was devoted to repainting and personalizing it. I transformed a spare room into a library, something I've long desired, and Dexter turned another into his home office. We can plant and unwind in the spacious backyard, away from the chaos we left behind. Kenneth and Arya never visited Europe. They were forced to act as parents when they realized we were serious about calling CPS. Their common acquaintances have informed us that they are finally enrolling in parenting classes and looking for childcare assistance. When Kenneth's parents realized we wouldn't change our minds, they ceased scaring us with the inheritance. Through our mutual connections, my mother continues to try to get in touch with us. She sends messages claiming that we are severing the family and that going away is childish. She even attempted to contact me using my work email account, but fortunately, my employer respects employee privacy. She wrote to me last week via one of my relatives, saying that we were being cruel by not assisting Arya and that she was depressed as a result of our behavior. Although he hasn't tried to get in touch with us directly, my father has been telling everyone he can that we left the family when they most needed us. Although he is attempting to portray us as the antagonists in this tale, most people who are aware of the real facts will appreciate why we had to keep our distance. Throughout it all, my grandparents have been our staunchest allies. They have made it plain to everyone that they support our choice and frequently pay us a visit in our new house. My mother was even instructed by grandmother to refrain from contacting us until she could respect our limits. They got into a heated argument over this, but my grandma refused to back down. In the end, Dexter's parents expressed regret for attempting to control us by threatening to take our inheritance. They acknowledged in a letter that their attempt to coerce us into taking Arya's baby was incorrect. We're still keeping our distance though. Months of coercion and pressure are not undone by a single apology. We've learned from the entire experience who genuinely cares about our welfare and who merely wants to utilize us to solve their problems. We've finally come to grips with our choice and are eager to begin a family of our own, on our own terms. We learned last week that Arya and Kenneth are finally going to parenting classes and couples counseling. We're happy that they're receiving assistance, but we don't intend to get in touch with them again anytime soon. It will take more than a few months of good behavior to restore the confidence that has been damaged. We're content with our quiet new life for the time being. In addition to joining a neighborhood community garden and making friends in our new neighborhood, we also intend to adopt a dog. Sometimes establishing enough distance to improve your personal happiness is the greatest approach to handle hurtful family relationships. We have no regrets about our choice, and that is precisely what we are doing. My parents sent me away after having my sister. They called me 12 years later to prove they're good parents after she failed. My parents gave up on me at 8 and sent me to live with my aunt. Before I turned 8, I knew they didn't like me. They basically had to deal with me. They had me in their early 20s, just starting their professions, and I watched them struggle to construct a life while raising me. Though I recently realized this, I think they resented me. I didn't understand why they hated me then. I spent my early years trying to please them, but nothing worked. My emotions were ignored. However, they behaved differently around friends and family. They couldn't let anyone know how horrible things were. They even convinced me to keep quiet out of fear of making them dislike me more. Years passed, and my mental and emotional health declined. I struggled in school and behaved out. I don't blame myself for my difficult childhood. My behavior would have changed if my parents had treated me better. They scolded, grounded, and punished me but failed. After my teachers complained about my behavior and grades, I misbehaved more to seek their attention. If being good fails, try being bad. This scheme failed. Mom got pregnant again around my 8th birthday. My parents were thrilled for the first time in years. I didn't understand the announcement at my birthday celebration. I learned weeks later. As my mom packed my luggage, my dad sat me down and told me I was going to live with my aunt. He said it was for my own good because I wasn't doing well there. Though young, I wasn't foolish. I knew they were dumping me. Replacement was coming with another baby. I had tantrums after being heartbroken. I wanted to stay with my family, friends, and parents, even if they mistreated me. They didn't care about my tantrums. They sent me to my aunt's house out of state. I felt miserable on the trip and begged my parents to let me stay. I committed to improve my grades and behavior, but they were set. I hadn't considered that this might not be about my grades or behavior back then. Even if I was the best kid, they might have hated me. My parents helped me settle in at my aunt's house for a few days, but I was still angry. However, my aunt helped me adjust. She may be the kindest and most loving person ever. My aunt, my dad's older sister and the oldest of 4 siblings, raised me because she had never married or had children. Although her siblings worked elsewhere, she worked on the farm their parents left them. She knew I was upset about moving in, so she reassured me that everything would be great and that I would enjoy the place once I got to know it. Her remarks helped me greatly. After 2 days, my parents left, and I broke down. My aunt was my only support. She constantly contacted my parents to talk to me to feel better, but they rarely responded. For 2 weeks I cried, and my aunt stayed with me. Eventually, I felt better. Living with her was so much better that I stopped missing my parents after a few months. I worked on the farm and went to school, and I was doing better. I had many friends, managed academics, and liked my teachers. My life improved once my parents sent me abroad. Even though we saw one another on vacations, I recognized I was better off without them. I was a troublesome youngster who needed a change of atmosphere, so my parents told my aunt I was moving in. After a few months, I told her my parents never wanted me, treated me horribly, and thanked her for taking me in. After that, my aunt treated my parents differently. She grew colder and distant. After that, we saw them at family parties and functions, but we haven't played much in 12 years. My happiness is greater without them, and they don't care. I have no relationship with my 12-year-old sister, which is probably best. Other family members say she's not growing up pleasant. She's one of the school's worst troublemakers at 12 and has a bad attitude. My parents have that issue, not me. My life is going fine. I'm in college to get a business degree so I can run the farm when my aunt retires. Since college is close, I can visit home every weekend, which is convenient. My parents called my aunt last weekend when I was at home because they couldn't reach me directly. First time in almost 12 years, we had a proper phone discussion. Their request was ludicrous, therefore it wasn't pleasant. I was curious when my aunt handed me the phone. After some little talk about my life, my parents said they were proud of my progress. They then said they wanted another go at parenthood. They asked me to stay in touch and move in after graduation. I was shocked since I couldn't fathom them requesting this. I questioned them why they suddenly wanted me back. Then they told me, my sister caused it. My sister is apparently even more of a difficult child than I was, which shames them. They wanted me to reconnect and show their friends and family they could raise wonderful kids. Reconnecting was about using me as proof that they were good parents, not about getting back together. I think people judge them. My sister is becoming a problem child like I was. They must demonstrate good parenting. It's absurd to want me back, yet they expected me to consider it. I told them on the phone that I wouldn't return and wouldn't assist them prove anything to their friends and family. I told them I was done with them, and they were too. I already described how poorly I did with my parents and how much better my life was after moving in with my aunt. I feel they were the problem, not troubled children. They didn't raise me, so saying they did would be a lie. My aunt handled the job well. I wouldn't let them acknowledge her efforts. Most of our relatives and acquaintances knew my aunt cared for me. Despite that, my parents planned to lie and say they had maintained in touch with me and visited often. I told them I wouldn't help spread this untruth and they were alone. They threw a tantrum, saying they had supported me and my aunt for 12 years. Instead, they delivered a monthly check that hardly covers anything. My aunt always paid the rest herself, but she never complained. Now they were trying to appear supportive with their limited efforts. They told me my sister had failed, which was humiliating, so I had to help them because they were my parents. I lost it then. I told them they were not my parents and no longer my family. I told them to leave me and my aunt alone because she was my only family. Update 1. Hello, everybody. When I first posted 2 days ago, most of you agreed I'm NTA. I appreciate that since it helped me understand. The only reason I doubted myself was that my parents had tried everything to convince me that what I said was bad in the preceding week. They made it sound like I was intentionally harsh. Honestly, I didn't believe I said anything wrong. Not rude or impolite. After reading the comments, I knew they were trying to pressure me into agreeing to their requirements and returning home to show off their successful parenting. Despite blocking them, they keep contacting me from various accounts and phone numbers, which is bothersome. My aunt told me to disregard it. She stated there was no need to apologize if I was right. She also asked several family members why my parents were suddenly so eager to prove they were decent parents. That's when she learned what happened. I heard she smoked at my sister's 12th birthday party 2 weeks ago. When my parents tried to confiscate her cigarette, she threw a huge rage that caused my mom to cry. My mom's older sister, grandparents, and other relatives told her at the party that their 12-year-old daughter had a cigarette because of their parenting failure. They said my parents could have prevented this by being more proactive. My parents have spoiled my sister since childhood, I've learned. They never refused her, gave her a substantial allowance, and allowed her to do everything she wanted unsupervised. She knew she could get away with anything, so my 12-year-old sister ruled them. After the cigarette incident, many friends and family criticized them for raising her improperly. Due to their desire to prove themselves good parents, my parents want me back. To demonstrate their success, they want to display me as a prize. Their behavior is pitiful. Most importantly, they should realize this strategy won't work because everyone knows my aunt reared me. Even my aunt's contacts disapproved of my parents' decision to send me away when I wasn't doing well. When your kids are struggling, you should help them, not ignore them. They had often advised my parents to bring me back after my sister's birth so we could grow up together. My parents ignored it, stating I was better with my aunt and they knew best. I don't understand how or if my parents can think of others. They could easily write off my sister while trying to gain me back by labeling her a failure. Her 12-year-old age terrifies me. I think counseling would be enough to get her back on track. I don't think my parents should guide me. This is the child they sent me away for, saying they wanted to save time, money, and energy for her. However, they have raised and treated her this way. They say they sacrificed their oldest kid for her, but I don't think they care about us. I don't think my parents were meant to be parents. I could easily resent my sister because she got everything I never did from our parents: love, care, affection, money, and time. Personally, I feel awful for her. All of that isn't enough to raise a child properly. I'm more surprised that my parents failed both of their children. I hope they quit calling and messaging me since I don't want to talk to them after what my aunt and other family members taught me. Next time they guilt trip me, I'll tell them. Update 2: I've remained silent for a few days, but if my folks tried to guilt me again, I'd tell them. They did. They called me from a new number 2 hours ago. I was told to apologize and return home as soon as I picked up. I was feeling sick today and moody. That phone call made matters worse, and I snapped. I shouted at them, saying I wouldn't apologize since what I said was true. They were not my parents. They had done nothing to deserve that label. I'd call my aunt my family because she raised me. I informed them they hadn't seen me in 12 years. Before that, they ignored me. They should blame themselves if they can't accept my not seeing them as family. They should stop phoning me to make me feel awful about something I don't have to do. They interrupted me, saying that while my aunt reared me, they supported us and we shouldn't forget that. I said the money they sent barely met my expenses. My aunt paid for practically everything herself, so my parents' money was useless. If they had kept me, they wouldn't have had to pay child support. They should quit acting like providing money was a tremendous favor to my aunt. I informed them child support was the very least after sending their son to her. She kept this from the family out of love, even though she could have ruined their reputation. They should stop talking about their spending because money isn't everything. The incident at my sister's birthday celebration should have taught them that. They also threw money to their youngest daughter, who is now a spoiled brat. They called her a failure, but my parents failed. They failed us both. They reacted defensively when I said it. They said my sister was happy and I didn't understand. They said her birthday party incident was one time. But I know happy kids, especially 12-year-olds, don't smoke because they can. Telling them they were probably attempting to convince themselves didn't mean I believed they were trying to raise my sister. They did the same mistakes with her as with me, but in reverse. They neglected me but spoiled her with money and too much attention. They didn't govern her correctly during their time with her. I knew this even though I'd never met the youngster. They needed to contact me to prove they were decent parents, showing how little they cared about their kids. They wanted to look like good parents, not be good parents. Perhaps this was too much truth for them. They yelled at me, cussed me, and said I had no idea what I was talking about. Their defensiveness and ranting validated my accuracy. We argued for a few more minutes until they said they were glad they sent me away years ago. They said they were glad they selected their daughter since I wasn't good enough to be their son. They hung up, perhaps fearing their goodbyes would hurt me. I didn't care. I was glad I won the dispute because otherwise they wouldn't have resorted to such low blows. Now, I hope they think twice before fighting or calling me again. Only my inability to aid my sister bothers me. I feel bad because she might survive outside my parents' terrible atmosphere. But sometimes you win and lose. Third update. A week has passed since I spoke to my folks. That last phone call was the last time they disturbed me, which is better for them. From what I know, they've been telling the family that my sister's cigarette event was one time and won't happen again. But nobody is duped. She may have more going on. This may have been her first cigarette, but who knows what else she's done. My parents were the only ones responsible. It was evident that their lack of monitoring and discipline caused this. I don't usually condemn someone without knowing them, but my parents deserve it. What kind of folks abandon one child while pregnant with another? Who? My parents. I'm delighted my family is now seeing how broken they are and keeping their distance. After years of silence, my aunt has begun to reveal why they left me with her. They didn't want me around because they wanted to spend more time with their other child, not because I was a troublesome kid. My parents made me a problematic kid, not me. If I were to blame, I wouldn't have thrived after moving away. My aunt hid this for 12 years because she didn't want to destroy my parents' reputation, but now she thinks they deserve it. Due to their defensiveness, my parents are already feared. Denial regarding parenting failure is evident. Everyone now knows my parents are the culprits after hearing our story, that they abandoned me to my aunt. They don't deserve my sister or myself. Some may believe we're overreacting and don't need to kick them while they're down. But this wouldn't have happened if they hadn't called me to help them pretend to be wonderful parents. They deserve it. Update 4 posting again after 2 weeks brings a huge update. Maternal grandparents are fighting for custody of my sister. My parents sent me to live with my aunt, but I've always maintained in touch with most of my family. I have a good relationship with my grandparents, so when they called a few days ago to ask about my parents, I told them. They were delighted I finally told them about my parents' mistreatment. They believed my parents had a solid cause to send me away for years. Now they know no cause could justify putting your child away. They apologized for not discovering the truth sooner, and I said it was okay. Everyone struggles, and I didn't seem to be hurting. It would have been hard to know without being told. After the cigarette incident with my sister, my grandparents heard allegations about my treatment from other family members. My aunt finally told me how my parents abandoned me after leaving me off at her house. My grandparents decided to investigate after hearing this. They didn't want their younger granddaughter to experience what I did. After talking to me, they discovered my parents hadn't changed. They still cared more about appearing good parents than being there for their kids. That's when my grandparents fought for custody of my sister to raise her differently. I agree with the choice. My life improved after I left my parents, and I'm sure hers will too. They've been given temporary custody, but my sister doesn't care. Her indifference makes me think she'll get over it. My grandparents believe they will obtain complete custody shortly, but they will allow my parents visits. My sister has started trying to get to know me, which is the finest part. Several days ago, we spoke on the phone. She appears glad to talk to me, and I heard that our parents told her not to talk to me for years because I was a bad influence. I hope we can create a good friendship now that she's coming around. Hopeful for the future. Evicted by my parents, I secretly bought their house and tripled the rent to rewrite my own destiny. Things began to go downhill, or uphill, depending on your perspective. I worked part-time in a low-paying grocery store at 22 to finish my degree. Tom and Linda, my parents, pressured me like they owned my life. Every day, they pushed me toward their ideal life. They thought they knew best yet didn't know my wishes. I stealthily eat my mom's overcooked meatloaf at dinner on Thursdays. Though it felt like chewing cardboard, I didn't say anything for fear of a sermon on my ungratefulness. Dad abruptly asks, "How's that business degree?" In his usual concerned dad manner. Though preparing, I knew this talk would happen. My stomach fell as my heart raced. Rip off the bandage. I set my fork down, staring at the clump of peas I'd been pushing around my plate like a 5-year-old. About that, I shakily responded. I've contemplated changing majors. Room fell silent. The hallway clock ticked. Then I knew what was coming. Changing majors? My dad nearly gags on food. Only when angry would he glow scarlet. Yeah, I want to switch to computer science, I said, trying to communicate clearly. It felt like a firing squad. Before I finished, my mom answered sarcastically. Jake, thinking never been your strong suit, she joked, smiling tightly. We all knew it wasn't. She often jokes pretending to laugh. Sat there swallowing rage. I wanted to yell at them and tell them they were wrong, but I knew better. There would be more ranting, and I didn't want an argument. Dad continued. His fork shook the plates as it hit the table. Computer science, are you crazy? Business makes money. That foolish hobby is ruining your future. Tried to explain. It's not a pastime, Dad. Like it and think I can do well. You think? He disconnected again. Passion costs nothing, Jake. You're reckless. Think forward instead of doing what you want now. My mom agreed, feeding the fire. No more childhood. Don't play with your future. They didn't care about my wishes. As a project, any deviation from their design meant ruining it. Nobody considered that I might know what was best for me. After dinner, I collapsed on my bed after slamming the door. Like a burden on my chest. Calling Ashley on my phone. She alone understood my condition. How did it go? She asked, knowing the outcome. Like a freaking disaster, I murmured, rubbing my eyes. I told them, and they went berserk. Like I told them I was skipping off to join a circus. She responded by sighing. Jake, defend yourself, your life, not theirs. You owe nothing. Yes, but they're my parents. Not that easy. I get it, she muttered. But Jake, you're 22. No more childhood. Own your life or they'll run it for you. While staring at the ceiling, I realized she was right. I should act like a grown-up. The next morning, I felt dread and resolve as I informed them honestly that they could no longer dominate my life. My pulse raced as I went downstairs and discovered them watching TV in the living room. Mom, Dad, we need to talk, I said shakily but firmly. After my dad muted the TV, everybody looked at me like they expected big news, which it was. Switching to computer science. Dad frowned. You're not. I persisted this time. I chose this as an adult. I hoped they would give me it, but Mom stood up with her arms crossed. If you're an adult, you can support yourself, she said coldly. You have 24 hours to pack and leave. I was riveted, like my brain couldn't comprehend what she said. What? I succeeded? You can't be serious. My dad snaps. Oh, we're serious. You want to decide? Fine. You're doing it alone. I forget my walk back to my room, but I felt betrayed, like they were looking for an excuse to push me out. I was their son, but they treated me like garbage. I called my best friend Mike from my room without trying to talk well. I said, "Dude, they kicked me out," shaking my hands. "I don't know what to do." Mike immediately said, "Pack your stuff, man. Stay with me." I discovered it while packing my clothing in a duffel bag. My parents threw me away like trash. Despite how bizarre it sounds, I felt relieved. They no longer controlled me. Not sure what that meant. I slept in Mike's house trying to figure out what happened after getting expelled, but it felt like my life had changed. From fighting with my parents about my major to being homeless felt unreal, like someone else was experiencing it. I didn't mind Mike's one-bedroom apartment that smelled like stale pizza and exercise socks because I had a roof and a friend who wouldn't ask me to leave. I couldn't crawl to my parents for help because it was too cramped. Every movement made Mike's old couch rattle where I slept. Every time I finished my homework, my mind would replay what happened. It seemed like my mind wouldn't let me forget I didn't have a home. My savings were draining fast, and I needed to work more. I couldn't balance 2 jobs, school, and life decisions. Ashley recommended we eat lunch at a cheap sandwich cafe near Mike's to relax after she couldn't fix my problem. As I hadn't eaten much since leaving home, I figured going out might help. "How are you doing?" she inquired, eating her sandwich. I shrugged. "Honestly? Not good. I can't concentrate at school, and my money is running out. I doubt I can continue." She gave me the compassionate look everyone has given me since I told them what happened. "Jake, you're trying. Just a blip." Joyless laughter. "Yes, a mountain-sized bump." She held my hand across the table. "You'll understand. You've always been brilliant, even if your parents don't know." Her kind words didn't change the fact that I was stuck in a situation I couldn't escape. I felt like I was treading water to avoid drowning. After lunch, I worked on my assignments at Mike's, but as I looked at the computer screen, I realized I was getting behind. My grades were decreasing, and I was considering dropping out. I didn't want to, but other options were running out. After several weeks of no improvement, my money fell, and I realized I had to choose. Mike could only cover so much, and I couldn't keep freeloading on him. Leaving college seemed like giving up all I'd worked for. Signing the paperwork in the dean's office made me feel like a failure. My aim of being the first in my family to graduate college was disappearing like everything else. After leaving that office, I realized I had no degree, strategy, or money. I gazed at my phone on Mike's couch that night, unsure what to do. Ashley always called to check on me. "Now the plan?" she whispered. "I keep looking for work, but nothing comes through. Like every door is closing on me." My caller hesitated, clearly trying to cheer me up. "You won't give up?" "I don't have a choice," I said, trying to speak clearly. "Today I dropped out." "Oh, Jake," she said. "The end is not here. Find something. I know you will." I wanted to trust her but was losing hope. For days, I applied for every job I could find, but Sunnyside Restaurant, a decrepit restaurant that hadn't been cleaned since the 1980s, was the only one that offered anything. Flipping burgers and mopping floors was better than nothing since I needed money. I had something despite the long hours and minimal money. Earl, my manager, barked directives like boot camp as I pounded grease-covered burgers on the grill. Maybe Earl witnessed my hard work. He was tough and only cared about money. After a month at the diner, Earl approached me during a break. "Nice work ethic, child. Want more hours?" My forehead was sweaty, so I wiped it off to look engaged. "My friend needs a better paying night guard at this downtown office building. You in?" No consideration required. "Yes, I'm in." Flipping burgers by day and guarding an empty building at night, though unglamorous, it was something. I stopped affording sleep and was exhausted most nights, barely able to open my eyes, but I had to survive. Ashley kept sending me links to tech internships to get me back on track, but I didn't have time or energy to apply. I live for survival now. Every night, as I sat in that dark, empty office building staring at the city's flashing lights, I wondered, how did my life become this way? A few months earlier, I had aspirations and a future. Now I was surviving one shift at a time. The worst part was seeing no way 2 jobs were hell. The cafe was filthy and the nights in that empty office building were mind-numbing. I lived in a beat-up knapsack, slept 4 hours a night, and sipped energy drinks like water. I was making money, not much, but enough to keep me going. Mike didn't say anything, but I think he was glad I could help with rent. I didn't want to be the guy freeloading off my closest friend as my life went apart, so I handed him everything. A random meet things changed quickly when this guy came in for lunch while flipping burgers at the diner. I don't know if it was chance or the universe providing me a break. First, I didn't notice, just another customer. He looked fatigued, like the rest of us who worked too many hours for inadequate pay. After supper, he paid at the counter and gazed at the computer screen behind the register as I gave him his change. I practiced coding on break to keep sharp. He asked casually but suspiciously, "You're into coding?" I nodded, trying not to look thrilled. I taught myself. Hopefully it will be a career. I could have something for you. My organization requires entry-level IT professionals. Not fancy, but a start. I blinked, questioning what I heard. Seriously? Yes. He shrugged. Send me your resume, I'll represent you. I accepted his business card shaking, hoping for a bit of hope after months. That night, I ignored my double-shift exhaustion and started my laptop resume, which was imperfect but something. I wrote Mike before overthinking it and trying not to get hopeful. Turning point. After a few days, I believed he was being nice and I wouldn't be called. One afternoon, while working my night shift in that dreary, abandoned office building, my phone buzzed. It was a company email. I hesitated to open the screen before responding with an interview invitation. It was shocking to go from flipping burgers and guarding vacant buildings to perhaps working in IT. I rode the bus to work after stealing Mike's fine clothing and joining a modest, unassuming business that appeared like a new planet after a basic interview. Trevor from the diner greeted me at the door and introduced me to Tina, his supervisor. Tina was fierce but fair. I informed her I had self-taught coding and IT without a degree. She was first disappointed by my small efforts, but she then asked me to fix a technical issue promptly, which I had never done. I panicked, but then I remembered all those late evenings I spent training and coding challenges for fun. I exhaled slowly and worked, trying not to feel pressurized. After I finished, Tina nodded and gazed at Trevor without saying much. She said, "He's got potential, give him a shot." Despite feeling like my heart was ready to explode, I tried to stay cool. New beginning the following week, I started as an entry-level IT person. It wasn't glamorous, but I didn't care. For the first time in months, I wasn't selling burgers or guarding scary office buildings at 3 a.m. I was doing something I enjoyed for the first time in months, and Tina and Trevor patiently taught me and encouraged me to study. Not being held hand through everything was perfect. To prevent losing this opportunity, I worked at the startup all day and went to the diner or office at night. Sleep was rare, and most mornings I felt like a car had hit me. I couldn't have survived without Ashley, who gave me job leads and checked on the startup. She reminded me that I was building something for myself when I felt like I was falling apart. After months of beating, I broke. I couldn't work 2 jobs and be sane, so I quit. Earl was sad but understood. "Good luck, kid," he said earnestly. "You work hard. You'll be fine." It was amazing to leave the diner. I worked security nights when I wasn't at the business, but I wasn't burning out as fast. Over time, I dedicated every free moment to IT, acquiring new skills, performing projects, and absorbing knowledge. I was constructing something genuine, mine. I wondered if I was following a pipe dream, but every time I overcame a challenge or solved a problem that had stumped me for hours, that spark returned. Long missing fire. It took time for me to see my future again. I wanted my future, not my parents'. First time in years, that was enough. Some months into the new job, things felt different, not bad, just different from what I had felt in a while. Finally doing something I liked. I wasn't going to a dead-end job. Code and fix it were fun, but not glamorous. Get something I worked hard for. Tina went to my workstation one afternoon while I was programming. I loved her directness. She said, "Jake, I've been following your work for months. You have promised yet are holding back." I glanced at her, shocked. "Holding back? You mean what?" She crossed her arms and looked like she knew the answer but wanted me to say it. "You're talented, but you're cautious and adhere to familiarity. You lack risk-taking and pushing. Being comfortable is good, but comfort doesn't work in business." I was unclear what to say. She was right, I was doing the work, but not well. After everything, I was grateful to be stable and not mess up. Tina replied, "Look, Jake, you're good, but you need to improve to stand out. Try scary projects. You grow that way." I nodded, still understanding her words. This wasn't my parents' counsel to quit wasting my ability. This individual saw it and encouraged me. I followed her advice and volunteered for harder jobs I wasn't sure I could handle. I occasionally felt overwhelmed, but solving an issue was worth it. Tina handed me a big client job. I was scared since it was more responsibility than I'd ever had. But I was excited to prove I could do it. After weeks of late nights, weekends, and free time to perfect the project, I felt like I had run a marathon. I was exhausted, but I felt stronger. Several days later, Tina invited me into her office. I sat down, anxious about making a mistake. She acted swiftly. "Jake, your client liked your work. Every suggestion you made is being implemented." Unknowingly, I exhaled. "Really?" She nodded with a little smile. "You did great. Keep going and you'll succeed." Leave her office and I felt 10 feet tall. I thrived for the first time in forever and saw a future of building instead of scraping by. As I pushed harder, I understood how much I was holding back, not only in my career but in life. This cloud lifted, and I could see what I could do if I stopped afraid. Mistakes were inevitable, but they taught and progressed me. Ashley was always supportive, but she suddenly seemed proud of me. Instead of grumbling about my poor work or money, I'd talk about my new project or something fantastic I learned at dinner. She'd listen, really listen, like she could see I was on my way. After a long week at work, we sat on her couch one night. I was exhausted but happy. She smiled. She said, "I always knew you'd get here. Maybe not as planned, but you're doing it, you make it happen." I didn't know how to answer. She was with me through the worst, when I didn't know whether I'd make rent or where my next salary would come from. She made me feel safe and valued. Hearing her say that, I understood how lucky I was. "Thanks," I said forcefully. "I don't think I'd have made it this far without you." "You would have," she laughed, shaking her head. "A push was all you needed?" She may have been right, but her presence helped. Then things got better. I took on more duties and improved, and others noticed. Every time I finished one of Tina's harder assignments, I felt more confident. For the first time in years, I felt secure. I stopped security and wasn't making much money, but I wasn't afraid about my next meal. Tina summoned me into her office again one afternoon. I expected another extravagant project, but she had a serious look I hadn't seen before. She said, "Jake, I want to talk to you about your future here." Calmly but directly. Unsure of the direction, I arched an eyebrow. "Okay." She reclined in her chair. "You've done well in recent months. I think you're ready for more. I wish to make you full-time." After she started, I sat there trying to process it. Full-time, the dream? No more juggling jobs or scraping by. I don't even know what to say, I smiled. Smiled, just say yes. Yes, I did. After leaving that office, I felt lighter. All the strain, sleepless nights, and self-doubt were worth it. I arrived, though not as planned, and that felt good. Being promoted to full-time was like visiting a new planet. For the first time, I felt like I was doing something meaningful for myself and others without working a miserable side job. It was steady. After attaining that milestone, work got frantic. Tina meant it when she said I'd get additional responsibilities. I led teams for the first time and managed impossible deadlines on larger projects. My to-do list sometimes made me worry how I would do it all, but I had to. Every day was a challenge, but it was the kind that made me feel alive. It was significant to be trusted to do the job while still learning. Tina summoned me into her office again one afternoon. Every time she did, I felt like I was in school waiting to pass or fail a test. She looked serious, and I wondered if I'd done something wrong. She added, "Jake, I've got another project for you." Pushing a folder over the desk. I took it and flipped through. The new customer was a big company modernizing its IT infrastructure. Bigger than anything I'd done before. My stomach flipped when excited and scared. "This is a lot," I said, trying to seem confident but not arrogant. "I think you're ready." Tina nods. "I need you to guide the organization through this major undertaking." "Guide it?" I was shocked. I worked hard, but heading a project looked advanced. I said, "I won't let you down," feeling her faith. "I know you won't," she said, smiling briefly. Next week was my busiest. I worked nights and weekends at work making sure everything was fine. My staff was excellent, but I couldn't let anyone down under pressure. Ashley was wonderful, although I was rarely around and a zombie. She brought takeout to work, sat with me, and reminded me to take breaks. "You're going to burn out if you don't slow down," she warned. I adored this idea and thought it would change my career and life if I succeeded. I had to prove myself, not Tina or the firm, that I could handle this. I barely slept the night before the client presentation, mentally double and triple checking everything to make sure there were no loose ends. I felt like all my tension and anxiety from the year had built up to this moment, and I was about to do something significant. The next morning, I entered the boardroom to find the clients in suits and ties looking serious. I put up my presentation to calm my nerves, But it seemed like my career hinged on this meeting. Tina sat at the head of the table, watching me. I breathed deeply, comforted myself, and started the lecture. I stumbled over a few words and slides, but I answered their questions, explained the idea, and showed why they required this update. During what seemed like an eternity, no one talked. They scanned the documentation and whispered. My stomach flipped, and I half expected them to take everything apart. The IT department chief said, "This looks good," nodding. "We'll proceed." I was astonished and wanted to jump up and fist pump like a fool, but I nodded like it was just another day at work, yelling with joy. Tina took me aside after the meeting. "Great work," she said, beaming. "You've earned this." Her praise or the fact that I finished my largest assignment hit me harder. I felt like I'd passed an unseen finish line. After months of work, I left the office that night, relieved. I didn't care that I'd probably be back there in the morning working on something else. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was where I should be. On my way home, I excitedly called Ashley. "We did it, babe. The presentation was well received. We're proceeding?" Pride showed in her laughter. "You would, I knew. So proud of you, Jake." Hearing that made it real. I wasn't the lost, fearful kid who'd been kicked out of his parents' house. I'd built something for myself on my terms. There was less uncertainty about the future. I thrived, not just survived. And that feeling? It was all worth it. I went from struggling to excelling in IT a few years after that big job assignment, and I was surprised when I started my own firm. After working for a while, I had a good reputation, saved money, and made connections, so I was ready to jump. Starting my own business was hard. There were restless nights, countless paperwork, and constant worry that everything might fail. I felt this was my calling, so I kept going. I got contracts, built a small but solid crew, and the company took off. After 2 years, we made more money than I expected. I didn't serve burgers or protect vacant buildings. I grew my firm every month. I had built it. Ashley and I contemplated buying a house when my company took off. After years of renting, we wanted our own home. We looked at ads, attended weekend open houses, and fantasized about our ideal home. Seeing my boyhood house, which my parents still live in, for sale prevented me from surfing real estate sites. I was surprised to discover their house for sale. I hadn't spoken to them in years and didn't follow their life. I clicked on the advertisement to learn more. Their landlord had sold the property at a discount compared to surrounding homes. I suddenly had a crazy idea. Buy the house. Who buys their parents' house after eviction? It seemed petty, but I could, but they didn't know I had money or was considering buying a property. This could be my chance to reclaim control over a situation that had kept me powerless for years. I called my realtor and placed a bid without hesitation. It was inexpensive, and I had the money to accomplish it. A few weeks later, the purchase closed, and I acquired my childhood home. Now things get interesting. The property manager called me the day after the deal. "The tenants are asking to meet the new owner," said. "They want to discuss the rent and some issues they've been having." I grinned internally. Good things were coming. Not telling them, I told property management to make the appointment. The plan was in my brain. After parking my car in front and knocking like a landlord, Dad answered the door. He was surprised but didn't recognize me because we hadn't seen each other in years. I didn't appear like the guy who left their house with a duffel bag and no plan. "We're here to meet the landlord," he exclaimed. "That's me," I said, entering like I owned it. He blinks in amazement. "Wait, what? You're the landlord?" "Yeah," I said, trying not to laugh. "I bought the place." My mom came from the living room, wide-eyed. "Jake," she shouted. "Why are you here?" I smiled and leaned against the wall. "Well, I'm your landlord now." They were speechless, still absorbing the fact that the boy they kicked out years before owned their house. Though I wasn't celebrating, it seemed fair. Business was my obligation. I began. "So, breaking the awkward quiet. About the rent." They stared at me unprepared. I stated, "I'm tripling it," calmly. Dad was stunned. "Triple it? You're kidding." I replied, "Oh, I'm dead serious. Property values have risen, so I need a reasonable return on my investment. Rent is rising, a lot." Mom shook and reasoned with me. "Jake, we can't afford that. You know we can't." I shrugged. "That's not my issue. You can pay the new rent or move. Up to you." Though tough, I wouldn't back down. Years ago, they kicked me out, so now I set the terms. The stunned couple may have realized they had no choice but to stand there with no credit and no options. I left after an awkward talk to let them figure things out. I drove away feeling satisfied, vindicated, and hollow. I proved them wrong and succeeded despite everything they did to me, but as I drove away from that house, I realized that rent hikes and property ownership couldn't fix it. This was about release, not revenge. I wouldn't lower rent. I discovered my sister's secret income, property damage, and exploitation, so I kicked her out and sued for compensation. I don't know how to start this without seeming crappy, but here goes. For 6 years, my sister Jess, 25, has lived with me, a 27-year-old IT professional. It started with me wanting to do the right thing as the older brother and spiraled from there. Context: Jess got pregnant at 19. I won't go into detail, but it wasn't good. She had little assistance, and our mother, who raised us as single parents, wasn't financially or emotionally able to help her. As the elder brother, I offered, "Come stay with me." I didn't think much of it. I had just acquired a 3-bedroom, 1-bath house, but it was mine. I was proud of my years-long savings for that house. Like a sturdy base, you know? Jess was meant to stay for a few months to figure out her life. I sometimes assisted with the baby at night and made her feel comfortable. A few months became a year, then 2, then 6. At least Jess wasn't worthless. She generally cleaned her portion of the house and helped with shopping and shared places when her first child became older. She never paid rent. Not once. At first, I didn't want to be that person, so I didn't ask her. When I heard she was a single parent, asking for money felt wrong. Her life became pleasant over time. While living here, she had a second child, don't ask about the dad, and what started as a place to sleep became her life. My nephews, her boys, considered my house their home. I probably kept it going because I felt obligated to her. Jess and I had a difficult childhood. Our mom tried, but we were broke, and I always promised myself I'd improve. I'd help my family in need. Personally, I prefer my nephews. They're good kids despite their loudness and yard mess. About 2 years ago, I met Amy, my wife. Seriously, she's 26 and great. She understood Jess's position from the start and we clicked. Amy hardly mentioned my sister living here for the first 2 years. She occasionally asked, "When do you think Jess will get her own place?" But was patient because she understood it was complex. Amy moved in last year, changing things. I know, moving into a house with another woman and her 2 kids is hard. Jess and Amy were initially courteous, but there was unsaid tension. Amy felt that she couldn't claim the house since Jess had claimed her territory. This is where things went wrong. Gardening has always been Amy's passion. Growing up helping her grandma grow, she often remarked about how peaceful it was. Amy had been wanting to start a project for a year since moving in. We were talking about the house after dinner a few weeks ago, and Amy mentioned that she wanted to tear up part of the front yard and plant a spring garden. She had seen flowers, little shrubs, and a bench for us to sit. I liked the sound. The only thing in our yard is grass and a few forlorn plants. I thought a garden would look better, and Amy was so enthused about it, so I didn't say no. We considered hiring contractors to remove the grass, prepare the soil, and lay out the space. Amy wanted to take a few days off work to supervise and ensure it was done right. I advised her to pursue the strategy because it was sound. In retrospect, I know what I did wrong. I should have told Jess the plan. My house is mine, so I don't have to explain what I do with it. However, Jess has lived here for 6 years and her kids play in that yard often. Even though it's not her legal place, it's been part of her daily routine for so long that I should have warned her. Amy and I had strange schedules, so we scarcely saw Jess that week. She's generally around while I'm at work, and when I get home, the boys are asleep and Jess is relaxing. I didn't think calling attention to the garden was necessary because I thought she wouldn't care. A stupid assumption, looking back. On the scheduled contractor day, Amy took the day off to handle things. I was at work as normal, unaware of what was about to happen. Construction crews arrived early and tore up the front yard. Amy accompanied them to ensure proper execution. Amy said it was fine at first. She said good morning to Jess, who hardly looked at her, and went about her business. Jess then observed what was happening. She supposedly lost it when she witnessed workmen breaking up her kids' daily playgrass. Amy said the ranting started suddenly. Jess stormed out in her pajamas, wanting to know what was going on. She said Amy ruined the yard and took her kids' only play space. Amy tried to tell Jess that she and I had discussed it, but she refused. Amy reported Jess shouting. She screamed at the contractors to halt and told them not to touch anything. Amy said, "Actually, you don't get to make that call. This is our home." Jess replied, "I've lived here for 6 years. You can't rip apart my home either." Things got out of hand then. Our neighbor Karen, in her 40s, heard the ranting and intervened. Karen and Jess are friendly, her kids play with my nephews and they bond over being single moms. Later, Amy told me Karen came over and immediately took Jess's side, questioning what the workers were doing and why Jess didn't know. Amy tried to stay cool, but Karen ignored her. She called the cops. Police, yes. Thinking about that, I still can't believe it. Karen reported unlicensed laborers messing up the yard to 911. She claimed Amy couldn't change anything because the owner wasn't home. The police arrived quickly, I presume in a quiet neighborhood like ours, they had nothing else to do, and things grew even crazier. Amy tried to explain that she had permission because this is her house and we're married, but the officers told her to go for the night because I wasn't present to confirm. They let her take an overnight bag and then escorted her out of our residence. I was at work and unavailable when I learned about this. Our IT facility's warehouse zone prevents me from carrying my phone during shifts. Not until I checked my phone on break and saw roughly a dozen missed calls from Amy did I realize what had transpired. I felt very stupid. I left work early, got in my car, and drove home for an hour trying to understand what happened. That night, I felt like my brain was short-circuiting at home. Jess was sitting on the couch, calmly scrolling through her phone, as I entered the house. Meanwhile, Amy was absent. My sister acted like she was the victim when my wife was evicted. "Where's Amy?" I asked, trying to speak clearly. Jess innocently looked up. "She left," she remarked as if it were plain. "Police made her do it." Her tone immediately irritated me. Not yet yelling, but near. Why did Jess call the cops on her? What the hell is happening? She then defensively began her story. She claimed she had no option. Amy and the workmen were destroying her kids' play environment without her knowledge, so she acted. She talked about living here for 6 years and how Amy changed everything without appreciating her. "You don't get it," Jess remarked. "This has been my home for years. You can't rip up the yard without my permission." What I heard was unbelievable. After years of supporting my sister, who has lived here rent-free, was acting like she owned my house. "Your home?" I said. "Jessica, this isn't your home. You live here because I let you. I helped you for years, and you call the cops and kick out my wife." Then she played the victim. She cried as she said her kids loved the yard and had nowhere else to play. I loved my nephews, but her response was terrible. "You screamed at Amy," I replied, raising my voice. "You shamed her in front of workers, got the neighbor involved, and called the police. Someone does that?" Jess got up and yelled back, attempting to match my energy. "You and Amy didn't even tell me. I had to find out when strangers were digging up the yard. You don't just get to change everything without talking to me first. I've lived here for 6 years. I have a say in this." I stopped. Her statement was so ridiculous that I paused mid-sentence. "You have a say, Jess? You don't pay rent, you don't own this house, you've been living here because I've been helping you out." She said it, the line that boiled my blood. "I have tenant rights. You can't just do whatever you want anymore." I froze. "What did you just say?" Jess crossed her arms and repeated it, quieter but firmer. "I have tenant rights. I've lived here for 6 years. You can't just kick me out or change things without notice. Legally, I have rights too." I had to leave. I couldn't look at her. Sitting on the porch, I tried to relax. I was angry, not afraid, so my hands shook. Amy called when I was outside. I could tell she was upset while staying with her sister. "I can't believe your sister did that to me," she gasped. "I'm your wife, and the police made me leave our house." Hearing her pain enraged me. "I'll handle it," I assured her. "This is the last straw, Amy. Jess has to go." I went inside later. Still sitting, Jess pretended nothing had happened. I was honest this time. "You must leave," I said. She appeared surprised at me. "What? Kicking me out over a garden?" "No," I answered. "I'm kicking you out because of how you treated Amy. I'm kicking you out because you think you have more of a right to this house than my wife does. This is my home, Jess, and you crossed a line." She cried again, saying I was cruel, that she had nowhere to go, and that I chose Amy before my sister. And maybe I was. But I didn't care then. I wouldn't let her disrespect my wife and behave like she owned the place. I set a deadline. "You have 60 days to find somewhere else. I'm serious. I'll help you pack, I'll help you find a place, but you're moving out." Jess slammed her door as she stormed to her room. I stood there exhausted for a moment. I saw a lawyer the next day about tenant rights. I didn't want to be surprised if Jess fought me. The lawyer claimed Jess may have residence rights because she's lived there so long, but since there's no lease and she's never paid rent, she might be evicted easily. "Just give her written notice." Yes, I did that. I printed an official notification and gave it to Jess that night. "You're really doing this?" she asked, crying. "Yes," I answered. "It's time, Jess." Felt awful. Yes, I did. I adore my sister. It wasn't simply the yard anymore. Respect, boundaries, and putting my wife first were key. Amy received my full story via text that night. When she returned home the next morning, I saw how relieved she was to be home, and I knew I had done the right thing. I've initiated official eviction, and I'm not backing down. Maybe this makes me a lousy brother, but I'm done. Any developments will be posted. Update 1, my last post on handing my sister eviction papers was a week ago. Things have risen unexpectedly, but I'm addressing it systematically and obtaining pleasant outcomes. First, Jess's reply surprised me. Instead of accepting reality, she fought back legally. She engaged a cheap consultation lawyer who assured her she had squatters' rights. Her lawyer wrote me a threatening letter alleging she had equal property rights after 6 years of residence. They didn't realize I'd already consulted an eviction-specialized real estate attorney. Jess has fundamental tenant protections, but her situation is weak, my lawyer said. She has never paid rent, and we have no written agreements governing her stay. All paperwork lists me as the sole owner and my wife, Amy, as a legal resident. Better yet, my lawyer said her garden axe helped us. It shows antagonistic behavior toward legitimate property owners. What about Karen, the neighbor who phoned the police? It seems she's generating more difficulty. She wrote on our neighborhood Facebook page that I'm evicting a single mother and her children. She tried to arrange a protest outside our house. My lawyer wrote her a cease and desist letter saying that her activities could be harassment and interference with court procedures, which backfired catastrophically. The most intriguing development was Karen's unexpected police visit. Falsifying police reports of unlicensed buildings might have consequences. She may be charged with making a fraudulent police complaint. Her attitude changed so rapidly afterward. She hasn't spoken in days. Since this began, neighborhood dynamics have changed substantially. Some neighbors initially supported Jess, likely because she had portrayed herself as a suffering single mother for years. After Karen's failed protest and Jess's financial predicament became public, people's views changed. I was surprised to learn that Jess has worked part-time for 2 years while stating she couldn't afford to move out. My lawyer subpoenaed her bank documents for eviction, and she's been saving a lot, but not for moving out. She's been on exotic holidays with friends while telling me she's poor. When Jess played her last card yesterday, things got interesting. Her lawyer made a settlement offer to depart peacefully provided I gave her $10,000 in relocation help. They said she deserved recompense for her long-term investment in the property because she cleaned and maintained the dwelling. Perfect response from my lawyer. He sent a precise estimate of market rate rent for 6 years, utilities she never paid, property tax she never paid, maintenance expenditures I paid alone, and current legal bills. The total exceeded $100,000. In exchange for her prompt departure, he graciously waived these charges. Jess's lawyer suddenly lost interest in financial claims. Through this process, the family's reaction has changed. Many, including our mom, were initially conflicted. Most of them understood my viewpoint after seeing the garden incident police report and Jess's secret savings. Mother contacted Jess to say she was out of line. Jessica didn't expect the family to support me. That was a turning moment. All along, Amy has been really supportive. She's been helping me document everything, and she pointed out to me that the garden incident's security camera footage exposes Jess and Karen's behavior. This helped our legal case immensely. Positively, Amy's garden project is progressing on a different time frame. We recruited new contractors, the old ones didn't want to return, and work will begin when Jess leaves. Amy is working with a landscape designer to improve her plan. Kids are the only thing that bothers me. Jess is using them as emotional leverage because they don't comprehend. My nephew asked me yesterday why we no longer love them, presumably from his mother. Though it breaks my heart, I remember myself that Jess caused this. Although the 60-day notice period continues, my lawyer feels we're in a solid position. Jess's tenant rights claims have backfired. By identifying herself as a renter, she's also acknowledged me as her landlord, giving me additional legal right to evict her. Jess has started packing, but she's being subtle. I think she's finally realizing it, especially since she lost the family's sympathies. Fighting this would be costly and pointless, her lawyer undoubtedly told her. I'll update when things change substantially. I expect Jess to depart early to preserve face or stay until the last minute out of spite given the situation. Either way, we're ready. After seeing how quickly her legal threats failed, I doubt she will go that far. Update 2: Karen's legal issues grew. After the police investigated her bogus report, she faces minor charges. She apologized and asked us to withdraw the allegations, but the prosecutor continued. It appears she's done this with other neighbors. The most satisfying development was from our homeowner's insurance company. They pursued Karen for higher premiums and legal fees after learning about the garden incident and bogus police report. We're using her large payout to fund a better garden project than planned. Jess made one more desperate try 2 weeks before eviction. She tried to claim first possession, claiming half ownership from her 6-year residence. When our lawyer supplied the considerable record of her rent-free status and my constant ownership claim, her new lawyer, the third she's hired, quickly dropped that claim. Family dynamics have flipped in our favor. The cousins told us Jess had been conducting a modest online business from our house for a year, which she never acknowledged while citing financial trouble. She registered her business at our location but never reported the income. The authorities received this information. We hired expert movers and security on moving day to guarantee everything went properly. Jessica tried to stir controversy one final time by claiming she owned some of our stuff. Our lawyer briefed movers simply referenced our itemized inventory and photos from when she initially moved in to establish everything was mine. Her attempt to harm the house before departing sealed her destiny. She thought she was smart by loosening cabinet handles and poking tiny holes in window screens. She didn't understand that our new security system recorded everything. Our lawyer will undoubtedly sue her for damages using this footage. The hardest thing was kids. My nephew wrote a sorrowful note that he would miss his home on moving day. Jess never opened a savings account for her kids' schooling, despite her secret income. Eventually, they'll realize their uncle cared. Amy's garden project is underway. The contractors began work the day after Jess left, and the transformation is stunning. Our modest play area for neighboring kids will be supervised, proving we're not the villains Jess painted us as. The neighborhood's response to the truth is overwhelming. Many neighbors told instances of Jess's manipulation throughout the years. One elderly couple said she borrowed money from them monthly for the kids' medical bills. A lawyer is helping them collect those cash. Karen was finally humiliated when she defended her actions at a neighborhood association meeting. Another neighbor showed her interference in other disagreements. She was expelled from Neighborhood Watch and barred from community leadership. The house is quieter, organized, and ours for the first time. Repainted the walls, fixed Jess's damaged carpets, and put up my dream home office. With a complex watering system and seasonal flower rotation, Amy's garden is becoming a neighborhood attraction. The makeover is so spectacular that a local gardening group wants to include it in their annual tour. Our legal win was greater than expected. In the final court hearing, Jess's illicit commercial activities were highlighted. The judge was harsh on her using our address for business registration and taxes. The judgment upheld our eviction and awarded property damage and legal fees. The judge's closing statements about familial goodwill misuse were pleasing. Community opinion has changed drastically. The conflict originally kept our next-door neighbors away, but they recently organized a cookout and apologized for not addressing Karen's false tale sooner. They had comparable manipulation experiences with Karen and Jess, demonstrating a trend we hadn't understood. The most shocking part is how this experience has strengthened some family relationships and severed harmful ones. Our cousins, who revealed Jess's secret business, visit often. They've helped us document everything for legal purposes and supported Amy's garden initiative. Our mom is at peace with the outcome after initially struggling. She recently informed me that seeing Amy and I handle things with respect and legality taught her that tough love is sometimes needed. She now visits regularly to help Amy with the garden and enjoy our tranquil atmosphere. We received an unexpected letter from Jess's oldest child last week. He wrote to apologize for some of his move-related comments while staying with our aunt for the summer. It was written in his own words without his mother's influence, giving us hope that we may re-establish that relationship even if Jess remains estranged. The restraining orders against Jess and Karen were approved last month, adding security and peace of mind. The judge said our thorough documentation and security footage made it one of the best prepared cases she has seen. Our lawyer's final report had intriguing figures. Nearly $150,000 was spent on rent, utilities, and damages over 6 years. A large percentage of this cash was awarded in the judge's final order, although we doubt we'll see it. But having the judgment on record feels good. I regret condoning Jess's actions for 6 years, but terminating it was right. Sometimes doing the right thing involves being someone else's villain. Amy and I are finally enjoying our home as we should, and our legal protections ensure Jess can never do this again. For comparable situations, document everything, hire a qualified lawyer, and don't let emotional manipulation take over your property rights. The preceding few months were difficult, but perseverance paid off. Our home is finally ours, and justice was more rewarding than I expected. Finally, thanks to the Reddit community. I survived this process thanks to your comments on my earlier writings. You all gave me great legal advice, and your tales helped me feel less alone. Many thanks to those who suggested the security cameras, they were essential evidence. This community's insight and support helped us win justice. Please pardon me as I help Amy with her new butterfly garden section. When you have your own space, you can do incredible things.